This video is sponsored by Surfshark, the best VPN on the market. Surfshark is an app or browser extension that allows you to change your location to access websites in other countries and keep you safe from hackers. For example, we here in Ireland can access other countries' Netflix libraries, streaming services such as DAZN in Spain for those all-important Premier League games. Surfshark keeps you safe and private by protecting everything you do online. When your device connects to the internet, all that information is, in a way, blurred out. Surfshark is particularly useful for keeping you safe if you use public Wi-Fi, such as a college or a cafe. Surfshark allows you to use one subscription on unlimited devices, meaning that you can even share an account with friends and family. On top of this, Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you don't like it, you can even get your money back. Our sign-up offer gives you Surfshark VPN for just over €2 per month and up to 4 months free. Why not scan the QR code on screen or use the link in the description to take advantage of this offer. What is up, my friends? How are we? You are very welcome along to Sunday night's Late Night Agenda, where I believe we have a potential big problem. I'm not even speaking about the managerial situation as such, but we will of course touch on that tonight. We're going to discuss quite why we didn't get Mark Gay as a few more details start to emerge around Liverpool's financial situation, shall we say. We're going to give you some reporting from Paul Joyce. We're going to talk about the possibility of Costas coming back to the Reds. We're going to ask, can we really get Sandro Tonali? That and lots more, as well as of course the fallout from yesterday's pathetic draw against Burnley. We'll take you through what some of the media have said about that as well. As always, ladies and gents, this is your show, so please do come in, have your say by all means, but make sure we show each other a little bit of respect, because that does go a long way. There's a poll running in the chat right now to kick us off tonight that just asked, do you expect a first team signing in January? For what it's worth, at this point, I don't. I wish I did. I wish I could come on here and sound a bit more optimistic on it, but based off things that are starting to come out from behind the scenes, it looks as if, well, things are becoming a bit clearer. You know, I started off the day and we were preparing for a stream and we were preparing to talk about the likes of Bastoni, talking about maybe Xavi Alonso's future. We're talking about bits and pieces like that. But as the day gets on and the details start to come out, it feels more and more like our frugal ways are coming to the forefront. I don't know quite where to point that finger of blame just yet, but we're going to try our best to explain to you where we're coming from with it tonight. Lots to go through. We'll talk about Bastoni, like I've mentioned. Newcastle could be willing to sell Anthony Gordon. I know, I'm not even going to try and link us to him, don't worry. It's just a story that is doing the rounds. And look, I want to say again a thank you to everyone that joined us last night as well. It was a very helpful stream from my perspective to kind of gauge everyone's feelings, and you know, lots to get through. So let's kick off tonight then. Missed the game yesterday. Glad I did by the sounds of things. However, it's Champions League, top 8 or nothing for me when it comes to the manager. Love your videos. Keep up the hard work. Thank you. So that's a really good kicking off point, because I want to read you through some of what James Pearce has written. And I'm not here to have a pop at James Pearce. I'm just going to try and give you a flavour of what the club are saying is important and what is bare minimum territory. So hear me out while I read through a couple of excerpts from this James Pearce piece for The Athletic, and then we'll come and have a talk about it. So this isn't all of the article, this is just bits and pieces from it, and of course if you want the full article in its entire context, go have a look at The Athletic. But Liverpool have won just 5 of their last 17 league matches, collecting just 21 points out of a possible 51. So let's just start off having a little chat about that part of it. Liverpool have won 5 of the last 17 matches in the Premier League, collecting just 21 points from a possible 51. That's 30 points dropped from the reigning Premier League champions. Now, to give it a bit more context, James writes that averages out at 1.24 points per game. When Roy Hodgson was fired as Liverpool manager in 2011, he had 25 points from 20 games, averaging 1.25 points per game. Now, James said, of course, context is important. Hodgson had no credit in the bank. Most fans never wanted him to replace Rafael Benitez in the first place, and what little support he had ebbed away inside 6 months due to the dour brand of football as much as the results. Liverpool were 12th in the table when Owners Fenway Sports Group relieved him of his duties. This situation is very different. Slot is a title-winning manager who has just had to deal with both the tragedy and major changes to the playing squad last summer. As head coach, he doesn't carry the can for recruitment decisions, and a number of crushing injury setbacks have also been beyond this control. So that's just part one about it, and I want to start breaking down the first part of that. So the context is important, as James has said, but he's very carefully choosing which context he wants to push there. So he goes on to speak about fans not having the backing or giving the backing to Roy Hodgson, and how Arne Slot is a title-winning manager who has a bit more goodwill in the bank. That's absolutely true. But what about the part that Roy Hodgson didn't have £450 million to spend in the transfer market? What about that aspect? And what about the aspect that Arne Slot has failed in this situation after that backing and despite being a title-winning manager? So my context on this article is that we're going backwards and not forwards, and that I think it's even a bigger indictment of Arne than it was of Roy Hodgson. And the part about us being 12th in the league table, well, have a little look. 3 or 4 points can drop you right back down, and we aren't that far away. We're 3 points within 3 or 4 clubs, and then 4 points within another 1 or 2. So we can very quickly find ourselves back down around the 8th, 9th place in the Premier League. So the situation may be different, James, but I don't think it's for the same reasons he's making out. Like I've said, Arne Slot's had a lot of money to spend. And the injuries, well, they're partly down to the manager as well, which I don't think James really goes on to talk too much about because of his selective squad usage and players that he's overplaying. But let me keep going. With Liverpool sitting 4th in the Premier League, well placed to qualify for the knockout stages of the Champions League, and still in the FA Cup, something significant can still be secured from this troublesome season. It's not a lost cause. Slot retains the backing of FSG, who currently have no plans to follow the lead of rivals Manchester United and Chelsea by making a managerial change mid-campaign. So let's just talk about this part of the article. So, well placed to qualify for the knockout stage of the Champions League. That's absolutely true, and there's no denying that. But again, it's selective. We want top 8, not just to qualify. Top 24, I think it is, or 26 qualifies you. But that's not what we want. We want to be in the top 8 of the Champions League because that guarantees we don't have the extra 2-legged playoff round, thus putting a more congested fixture calendar to make it even worse. So, context is important, and journalists love to talk about it being used correctly, but again, the selective context being used here. We are outside of those top 8 places at the moment. Now, we are in 9th and we're very close, but this game against Marseille midweek is going to have a huge say on it. Now, as for Slot still retains the backing of FSG, who currently have no plans to follow the lead of the rivals, I don't believe that to be true. I don't believe that to be true at all. I don't believe it to be true that he does have the backing. I believe it to be true that he is going to lose his job. It's just a matter of when and if they hold their fire till the summer. Now, we'll give more context on the timing frame of all of this a little bit later, but let me keep going. However, if he's going to stop hemorrhaging support among the fan base, Arne Slot needs to find some momentum, and fast. Previously, there appeared to be no obvious replacement for those demanding change. For those demanding change. You mean the fans? The people who are looking at the shite football that we're playing and are leaving early in games. So it's not those, James, it's the fans. You know, the people who actually support the club. We're the ones that are seeing our manager just not doing his job right. And the hemorrhaging of support isn't going to stop because fans have already made their mind up. It's only because of the likes of James Pearce and others who write articles trying to portray this in some type of a glossier look than it really is. I've spent today talking to so many Reds, trying to find out about the Alonso situation and going through it. And there is very little, if any, support for the manager. So there is no changing that around. Fans want him gone. And every game is torturous at this point. And everybody just feels like, when is it going to happen? Am I going to have to sit through this again? Let's be honest about this. That's where we're at. So we also went on to say that that's no longer the case following Xabi Alonso's exit from Real Madrid. I.e. that there isn't no obvious successor. He goes on to say Alonso, who has a close bond with Liverpool, dating back to his playing days on Merseyside between 2004 and 2009, would have been a strong candidate to succeed Jurgen Klopp in 2024 if he hadn't vowed to stay at Bayer Leverkusen for another year. Slot has emerged as an emphatic first choice for FSG CEO of football Michael Edwards and sporting director Richard Hughes. It's unclear when or where Alonso will look to embark on a new challenge, but with every damaging setback Liverpool endure, the noise is bound to be cranked up. Slot can only silence it by finding solutions to the problems facing him. Champions League qualification is the minimum requirement, and that's far from certain at this stage, with United just 1 point behind and Chelsea 2 points adrift. Now, let's just focus on that last part there from Mr. Pearce. The Champions League qualification is the bare minimum required. No, it isn't. Not for the fans. Maybe for the owners who want the money. But you ask any Liverpool fan this season what the minimum requirement was going to be, and I promise you scraping into the top 4 or 5 wasn't it. This rewriting of history, this rewriting of a narrative that they formed in the summer, that Liverpool were building a squad to go out there and compete against Europe's elite, to dominate domestically. I'm not going to stop saying that because that was the narrative. That's what was being told. I don't know anybody who thinks 4th or 5th place, scraping into it, is going to be enough to justify this as a good season. And I also want to have a bit of a difference with James on, he said, could save this season. There's a lot of hope in that word, could. Potentially save the season. The season could still be rescued. It won't be. All we're doing now is having to endure Arne Slot's tactics, the players who don't seem to want to do their job for the manager, and Liverpool's situation is getting worse as every game and week goes by. The damage is getting worse. So let's not pretend that we're going to cling on to some mad hope that a Champions League could drop into our laps out of the sky. The more likely situation is that we get knocked out of the Champions League and we win nothing this season. That is far more likely than this fairy tale ending that we'd all love, we'd all hope for, but let's be honest, we're not seeing any signs of it. So can we please stop with this happy clappy narrative? The manager should be fired. Saying we're not following in the likes of Chelsea and Manchester United is nothing to gloat about. It's an embarrassment. Arne should be gone. He has overseen shit result after shit result. Even our captain was surprised when someone said to him that it's 1980 and 1981 was the last time Liverpool failed to be the 3 newly promoted sides to the Premier League at home. Even Virgil's words were, wow. It's come as a shock even to him. Now, Virgil's starting to annoy me a little bit as well, but he certainly does have more credit in the bank, because I'm fed up with sound bites about Virgil being annoyed that fans booed. And we'll get to that in a minute, because he is annoyed that fans booed. And of course, Virgil's perfectly entitled to his opinion because he is Liverpool Football Club's captain. But make no mistake about it, the booing, whilst not great, is probably understandable from fans that I think have showed incredible patience to this point by not doing what other clubs' fans have done, which is booing half-time, booing through the game, booing at the end of a 1-1 draw home to Burnley, where they're fed up of seeing the manager's boring, stale tactics of football and excuses. That's where we're at. That's where Liverpool fans are. So let's not try to dress it up as anything different. That's where we are right now. Virgil said he didn't like to hear the booing, which again, that's his preference, I understand that. But instead of trying to push everything back on the fans, can we please understand why the fans feel like they've got to that point? Because we are talking about the match-going fans here. In this situation, it isn't any outside noise. It is those who pay their money and sit inside Anfield that are quite simply fed up of it. And I've spent the day fielding messages and calls from people who are just at their wits' end. They've had enough. There is no rescuing the situation for the manager. It's just a matter of how long will they have to endure what they're going through. So if FSG really want to put their finger on the fan base's pulse, that pulse is very much showing that there's no support for the manager. There's support and respect for a manager who's won a Premier League to a certain extent, but respect is the key word there. Because of course Liverpool fans respect the manager that's won them the league. But that doesn't give him carte blanche to fail miserably. How many records have we discussed this season, ladies and gentlemen, that are going backwards? That are going back to the this time the club was founded. Most league defeats in a calendar season. First time, I think, in the club's history, or in at least 50 or 60 years, that they'd lost 3 games in a row by a margin of 3 goals or more. There's so many things, and then all we get is, but there's still the hope of this, there's still the hope of that. We can't live off hope. We have to live off what we're looking at. We have to live off what we're seeing. What we're seeing is performances that just aren't good enough. Now, I want to take you through some posts from Sam Maguire before I dip back into the chat. Sam Maguire posted a few things today, and whilst I have great respect for Sam, I don't have to agree with everybody all of the time, and I do agree with a lot of what Sam's written here. So Sam has said, instead of looking to fix things tactically, Arne Slot went for the easier option of flooding the midfield to make it more difficult for the opposition. We stopped giving up many chances, but our attacking numbers fell off a cliff. There's no balance to the team for a while, he said. There's no clear attacking patterns of play. There's no clear goal. Liverpool have just been relying on moments of individual quality or opposition mistakes. And that is something we've all discussed on here many times, folks. That it feels like we are turning into Moments FC. That we are needing a Florian Wirtz masterclass or a goal from Dominic Szoboszlai from distance. No attacking patterns of play that are causing teams problems. Sam goes on to say, remove the penalty yesterday and our XG from 31 shots was 2.38 from 31 shots or 0.07 XG per shot. We didn't really create big chances against one of the worst teams in the Premier League. So the journalists that want to be sympathetic to the club can continue to do so. But there are counter-arguments out there and very valid arguments being put out there to show that this isn't rescuable, this isn't going to be rescued, and the fans have had enough. Anthrop, how are we, bro? Hope you're well. And I have your number, mate. Lee gave it to me and I will be in touch. I spoke to Connor about the podcast thing and I'll be in touch with you soon, my man. But thank you for dropping in, bro. Appreciate you. Right. Thank you as well, James. Appreciate you 16 months with us as a member. John said, I've been a Red for nearly 70 years and have never felt so disheartened about the disaster that is slot ball. I agree with you totally. We're playing shite. Love your platform and best wishes to you and your family. Thank you, John. From a Red that's seen it all. 70 years a fan. So this isn't like me, you know, a guy who's come in, only started supporting Liverpool in the last couple of years. I've been around football since I was 8 years of age. Not as long as John's been watching it, but I've been watching the Reds for 36 years now. And again, I can't remember feeling so disconnected outside of the Hodgson era. But at least with that Hodgson stuff, I felt Liverpool hadn't got a pot to piss in. We were poor. The situation financially around the world had changed and we had a couple of cowboys owning the club. So I don't feel that anymore. I just feel like this is now getting to a point where Hughes and Edwards are being stubborn. And I want to talk about their futures as well in a few minutes because there's an interesting piece from Paul Joyce, which I think will help me tie a lot of what I've said together. Get rid of the title-winning manager. Brilliant. Yeah. And? You didn't give a counter-argument, why not? Get rid of a title-winning manager. Absolutely. Problem with that? You happy this season? Just because somebody's done one good thing doesn't give them carte blanche to be shit and go backwards. So yeah, get rid of the title-winning manager. Take the sarcasm out of your statement and just be factual and say, yeah, we should. Because that's what people want. You're definitely in the minority. Poll after poll, platform after platform, it's shown. Liverpool fans are fed up and they're done. They're bored, they're disconnected, they can't listen to the manager's excuses anymore. So yeah, I can be a smart arse as well. He won a title last year and we've gone backwards after spending £450 million. It takes an awful lot for that to happen, to go backwards after getting the keys to the kingdom and winning the league in your first year. But you know the title winning manager that you're on about there, Whitney, in the first year? Well, that's the same title winning manager that got knocked out of the FA Cup by Plymouth Argyle. That's the same title-winning manager that got his ass handed to him by Newcastle in the League Cup final and out with it by Eddie Howe. That's the same title-winning manager that basically rim-jobbed Luis Enrique and Paris Saint-Germain before they knocked us out at the very first knockout point of the Champions League. And before you say they went on to win it, the reason we ended up playing Paris Saint-Germain was because we went over and lost to PSV Eindhoven. So everything that you say, I have a counter-argument to, because I don't just sit here and say I'm going to wind people up. I research. I do my homework. I spend hour upon hour looking into data, information, and taking the temperature of fans. So I'm prepared. So yes, fire the title-winning manager, because that was last year and this is the here and now. What if we were one place above relegation? Would the title-winning manager save him then? What if we got knocked out of the FA Cup in the next round? Got knocked out of the first knockout round of the Champions League? How much longer do we want to say, let's keep the title-winning manager? It isn't carte blanche to fail. Yes, everyone's grateful for that. Everyone. Nazar said, agree with Craig that argument isn't valid. We almost won the league with Rodgers the season before and we sacked him, if I'm not mistaken. Look, everybody respects and is happy that we won a league title. Nobody's trying to say any different. Everybody will always hold Arna in high esteem for that. But he's failing now. He'll always be welcome back. He'll always be highly regarded and he'll always be talked about as a title-winning manager. And rightly so. But he's failing, and he's failing in a big way now. Hey Craig, my wife just gave birth to her first child today. Currently watching together right now. Oh my man. Oh, that's so beautiful. And congratulations to you both. You know, Craig's a lovely name. And Craig Ian is an even better one. But in all honesty, Joseph, sincere love to you both and your new bundle of joy. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful time. Honestly, you've got so many great years ahead of you. And yeah, thank you for sharing your moment. It really means a lot with us. This situation with Slot is annoying. Just fire him, said the Wonder Man. Nay LFC said, Alonso in the summer for sure. It will happen, in my opinion. So we'll move on to talk about Alonso in a minute. And it happening in the summer could be possible. It could happen before then as well. But we will move on to talk about that one. Double L Line said, I recently did my first call-in with an Anfield Irishman other than you YouTube channel. Thinking of you helped me get through and gave me confidence. Thanks for what you do and inspiring me. Hope you're well. Well, cool. That's awesome. Good. And I've always said to anybody like that who he, wants to start getting involved in the content world or, wants to start an account or writing articles, do it. Do it. Because I tell you one thing, mate, I was shit at this when I started. And I mean really bad. I was slow, I was cumbersome, I was nowhere near as upbeat. So I'm proud of you and keep going. And I wish you nothing but the best. Here are the facts. 34% win rate. There is to talk about when we can get Alonso with a 74% win rate. Well, on Alonso, there was a piece that was doing the rounds today that suggested that he might be available for another chapter in the summer. But the article was written from the perspective of a Times writer that writes for Spurs. Because there is some talk that Spurs are also looking at Xabi Alonso as a potential candidate. Although Alonso respectfully believes he can get a job higher than Spurs. There is one report coming out of Spain which I cannot hold any put any weight behind, or I cannot hold any water to, and it says, beginning of the agreement between Alonso and Liverpool, the Spanish manager and the English club are very close to joining paths, only small details to wrap up. I don't believe that to be the case. I really don't. And the reason tonight, while we've put the title that it's worse than you think, is because it was worse than I even thought when I started to see some of the information coming out today. And some of that will be around why we didn't sign Mark Gay. Some of that will be around the future of those who make decisions at the club. But there's a lot of stuff that needs to be put into context for us as fans to have this conversation properly. So the poll that we have up at the minute is, do you think we make a January signing? And it's nearly at 3,000 votes. When it does, we'll end it. Because I wanted to ask you, a poll about the managerial situation. So excuse me, I was reading through something there. So yeah, we'll leave that one up a little bit longer. For what it's worth, I don't think we get any signings in January. Now, here's part of the reason. This from Paul Joyce. Liverpool had banked on receiving £35 million from Aston Villa for Harvey Elliott in the summer after bending over backwards in arranging the structure for his loan deal. This is a separate post. Liverpool had hoped that Mark Gay would recognise the efforts they'd made to sign him before the plug was pulled on deadline day and in turn waited for them until the summer. Think about that. Is it a coincidence that the £35 million that we agreed on deadline day for Mark Gay with Crystal Palace was the same £35 million that was in the deal for Harvey Elliott? And since that deal for Mark Gay has fallen apart, all we've heard is that Liverpool want to get Mark Gay on the free. Now we're starting to understand maybe why that is. Because they don't have the Harvey Elliott money coming to them. So this starts to make a bit more sense. And I'm not trying to be a tinfoil hat merchant here. It's spelled out in two posts. Liverpool expected the £35 million. And they also expected that their efforts, whatever the fuck that means, to lure Mark Gay means that he would wait until the summer. But from Mark Gay's perspective, what Mark Gay seen was a club that weren't willing to put money on the table from in January when another club was. So it again comes back to, and I hate to say this word after the summer that we had, cheapness. I truly, truly hate to say that, but it's looking like cheapness is part of the reason. Now, in what world are we supposed to believe that Liverpool Football Club couldn't have put 20 million quid together to bring in Mark Gay? We're in no FFP issues. This will be a conscious decision, not a financial decision. It's not a financial decision made because of an inability to spend it. It's a financial decision made because of an unwillingness to spend it, in my opinion. So what do we think of that? Bit of a coincidence, right? That on the same day that the deals were agreed, Elliott going to Villa with a £35 million clause in it, that Liverpool bent over backwards, according to this piece, to agree. And then all of a sudden, Aston Villa have told Liverpool they don't want to trigger that clause. And we didn't move for Mark Gay in January when he was available, but only wanted him on a free. I don't think it takes too much of a leap of faith to join those dots and see that it feels like we're just being cheap again. Because even after the summer that we had, and we all again were incredibly grateful for it, I certainly was, we knew the net spend side of it wasn't as high as the headline figure. And that's absolutely sound. You know, it's nothing wrong with your club recouping money. But to then not address an area of clear deficiency in the squad over a potential deal for Elliott falling apart, to not address that need is truly pathetic. Chelsea right now are out there trying to agree a €65 million deal for Xhaka with Rome. Crystal Palace have Mark Gay sorted out, flown in for his medical, done dusted. They've also brought in Antoine Semenyo. Other clubs are out there fighting to try and do the best they can in the season. And we've once again stood there while our seasons crumbled apart and not found a solution. A £20 million solution. It is nothing to do with the wages. I tried to say this the other day. The wages would have been something that we were probably going to give him anyway within a reasonable difference. So this just feels like cheapness yet again. I want to read back again what Dougie Critchley wrote the other day about the Mark Gay transfer, because I really need people to understand quite how stupid a decision this has been and what an impact it has. He wrote, Man City signing Mark Gay and their rivals have all lost. That's the very first line. After that said, City signed a 25-year-old with 4.5 seasons of Premier League experience under his belt and a guaranteed starter for England in the World Cup, for £20 million. Absolute bargain. Liverpool, the club that needed him most, a clear upgrade on Canade and Gomez, failing to sign him in the summer has created a season's worth of problems. So the acknowledgement in the media that the failure to sign Mark Gay has had a knock-on effect and caused those problems is one that isn't being parroted by the media that actually cover our club and our club alone. Forgetfulness, again there. Choosing of narratives, again there. And look, I get we all pick a narrative to some extent, but if you're going to try and paint a picture of us being unfortunate or unlucky, that's bullshit. We could have signed Mark Gay. He was there for the taking. We chose not to because we're cheap. I hate to say that, but that's how this is bearing out. So, we're nearly at the count for the poll. 1 second. We're about 30 votes away. Do you think we make a January signing for the first team? Yes or no? And while we're waiting for those, I'll go through a few more comments. USA Copbite. We've done that one already. Whitney said, don't question your commitment or sincerity. Just think more patience is in order. Don't be a pig in a poke merchant. So you have that phrase has gone over my head. Sorry, I don't understand it, Whitney. But the honest answer for me, Whitney, is that I don't think that patience is going to change the situation, my friend. And what I mean by that is, I said this a few times over the course of the last few months on the channel. If we were looking at a team now, Whitney, that were playing a brand of football that they weren't used to, and mistakes were coming from that, I'd understand it. But we haven't. We've got a hodgepodge of a manager who doesn't know what he's doing and doesn't know how to get the best out of this team. It doesn't even feel like the players that were signed in the summer had an immediate plan for exactly how they were going to come in. So truly, Whitney, and I mean this sincerely, I don't think time is going to make this better. I actually think it'll make it worse. Because look at the injury situation. People can talk about that and say we're unlucky. Excuse me. And say we're unlucky, but I really don't feel we are. And I feel it's going to get worse because we're not bringing in a centre-back. And that isn't on the manager. I'll fully give you that one, Whitney. But by not bringing in a centre-back, what's going to happen is we're going to have to overplay more, which is going to lead to injuries. The fact that he isn't utilising Chiesa and Rio Ngamoa has brought about other injuries. So it isn't just that, oh, we're not winning the league now. I promise you, it's deeper than that for me. I've looked at the numbers, I've looked at the style of football, and I'm not seeing progress. I'm not even aware of one full good 90-minute performance. And as I've said before, Whitney, as well, it isn't just this season for me, mate. It's before that. I was talking about it at the end of the last season and the standards dropping and the fact that we were going out of other competitions. He won a league title and he deserves credit for that. And I defended him against the accusations that it was Klopp's league title. And the reason, ironically, Whitney, that I defended him was because I said he was able to keep the lads fitter and we were able to get over the line. Whereas the season before, Kloppo's lads ran out of steam and injuries start piling up. But what we've done now is gone backwards. So I just, we might have to agree to disagree on it, Whitney. But I promise you, it's not just a hot-headed reaction to Warner, because we're now more than halfway through the campaign. And honestly, can you say we're getting better? I don't think we can, mate. I don't think we can. So, 76% of people don't think we're going to make a January signing. And thank you. Cosmic Red said, Craig, with all due respect, and everyone is entitled to their opinions, however, those that believe Slot will turn things around are delusional. But you see, Whitney and I may disagree, but Whitney has been nothing but fair in the way that Whitney has put across their comments. And I will always have time to chat to anybody who, like that, has a genuine opinion that might not be the same as mine. That's what we're here for. Because I'm here to be won over as well. If somebody put forward an argument to me that made me feel like shit, I'm wrong here, or I've missed something, I promise you I'm open to it. I really am. Thundercats Litterbox said, what people seem to not recognise or willfully ignore is that we won the league in the first 2/3 of the season with Salah playing like prime Messi. When Salah dropped off, the team turned mediocre. There are lots of variables in this, but ultimately, I know you go into every season, and yes, as the season goes on, we talk about the context. So like draws, I often bring up draws as a good example. A 2-2 draw against a team, on paper you might think not too bad, but if you're 2-0 up and you draw 2-2, you feel like you've lost. If you're 2-0 down and you draw 2-2, you feel like you've won. So the context of this season, in that there's still something to be salvaged, for me isn't good enough. And it isn't enough to justify keeping somebody in their position, because that wasn't the aim at the start of the season. And I understand that aims may shift as the season goes on, but you need to see those aims shift, and if you're going to keep the manager in, you need to see those improvements. We haven't won a league game in 2026 from the 4 we've played. 4 draws. One of them a very credible draw against Arsenal, but we've drawn against Leeds, Sunderland, Burnley, all newly promoted teams at home. There's no fear factor at Anfield. The crowd aren't on side. And once it gets to that situation, I really don't think there is a way to turn it round, because the morale isn't there in the fan base anymore for the manager. And if probably only Manchester United would be comparable in the relationship that we have with a manager at Liverpool. Manchester United fans, similar thing in the relationship that they have with the manager. It is, and this is going to sound a bit arrogant for both of our clubs, but it is a little bit different to others, in that the manager or the head coach in this position is a figure that you have to connect with. If you don't get the Anfield atmosphere. You don't get the fear factor. You don't get those big European nights where and people fear coming to Anfield, because it's like, the worst nightmare to play in. All that stuff is connected. And if you don't have that goodwill and buy-in from the fan base, you're not going to get that extra 10-15% that the players often talk about receiving from the backing of the fans in those big moments, because the fans have nothing to feed off. People are going now asking questions, should they even be going to games? What will I do with my tickets? Should I be going? So, if management don't sort things out, we'll be back in the 90s. Right. I want to ask a question. Maybe I should word this a bit different. Okay. So on the owners, I want to ask, do you think FSG are cheap owners? And I ask this as a sincere question because I wrestle with this in my own mind. Because in one sense, of course, I'm aware that the club wants to be self-sustaining. And of course, I do understand that. And I or no Liverpool fan I'm aware of would ever want our football club to be in a perilous financial position. But for many years, we spoke about what we'd heard, which was a new commercial partnership here. This person has come on board as the club's official coconut water partner. We now have so many commercial partnerships and deals, and Adidas shirt deals, and the revenue's coming in and in and in and in and in. And for years and years and years, we were asking, where is that money? Why aren't we seeing that put into transfers on the pitch? And we had different varies of reasons. Some of it being that the wage bill was high. Some of it being other reasons. But ultimately, I always felt FSG were cheap. Until this summer. This summer, I thought this is the start of a change. This is the start of them actually backing us for success. But now we're in January, and I feel if you have an owner who's genuinely hungry to win, you do what Manchester City have done. You do what Chelsea are doing, in that you leave no stone unturned to come in to make you a success right now. And all we keep hearing is that we have longer term plans, that these things aren't operated on a quick basis. There's planning, methodical planning that goes into it. That doesn't align with the Mark A situation. I think often the mythical figures of Hughes and Edwards, to some extent, and their genius is questionable. And another aspect on those I'll move on to in a minute. Lee Cole said the net spend since the start of their year is probably pretty low, I'd imagine. It is. But there's two ways to look at that. Have we had success under FSG? We undoubtedly have. Have they taken us forward as a club? They undoubtedly have. And there are so many things that they've been brilliant at and are brilliant at. But there's always been a question of, could they do a bit more on the transfer side? And the Mark Gay deal not getting done in January, to me, doesn't make any sense. Because if you truly want to win stuff, and even if you look at it with a long-term view, there's no reason that deal doesn't make sense. There's no reason £20 million for a player you wanted a few months ago and still wanted in another few months isn't done. And the £35 million deal for Harvey Elliott, to hear us almost crying poor mouth about that, really frustrates me when Fede Chiesa is sitting there getting 6 or 7 million quid a year and the manager doesn't want him there, and we spend 12.5 million quid for a player that we can't seem to get rid of. Now, I like Chiesa. Most others like Chiesa. But he isn't getting minutes. So we talk about the frugality and the genius and the cleverness of the financial side of our club and how well it's run, while at the same time paid 5 million quid for Arthur Melo on loan and his wages. Spent £500,000 on Ben Davies and his wages, brought in Ozan Kabak and that loan fee, and all of these things were failures. That's all real world money. That's money that's wasted. That's my problem here. Is that if we want to win now, this season, and you really want the manager to turn it around, then how are you not giving him what he needs? Or what any manager needs? Which is enough goddamn defenders to get through a season. Because our defensive situation at centre-back has gotten worse since the summer window, with the long-term injury to Giovanni Leone. So our need has gotten more dire, and Canade is no closer to a deal. So, we've got to be realists about this. Right, let's keep going. Metallica fan said this morning, new though, FSG only spend money if we sell players or go multiple transfer windows without spending. FSG just care about their revenue, profits, and not about success. It's that line in James Pearce's piece that stood out to me and wound me up. The line about Champions League qualification still being in our means or still being possible. Because that means nothing to us as fans. We understand that Champions League money is important. Of course we do. But it isn't a trophy. When we qualify for the Champions League, fans aren't out on the street in their droves letting off pyros and having parties. There's no parade for a Champions League qualification. Trophies are what fans want. Success is what fans want. And yes, we are qualifying for the Champions League, but that cannot be the goal. That cannot be the end desire, just to scrape in. This season at the start of it, anyone you asked, what's the plan? What's the best thing that you want this season? What do you expect this season? One of the big trophies would have been possible. One of the big trophies. That would have been a bare minimum, if not more. And now that we're falling further and further away from that, we're somehow supposed to keep believing in Arna. I just don't see why they haven't fired him. And I don't see a good enough reason to not fire him, other than bare hope. Because I don't think anything in the style of play bears out supporting him. I don't think anything in the run of results, even though you can say unbeaten in 12, it's a pathetic unbeaten in 12. With draws to teams we should have been playing off the park. You know? We're 7 points, I think, behind Aston Villa, who lost today. Imagine if they'd won. They'd have been within 3 or 4 points of Arsenal. And us to even try to catch third place. We're now in a cat fight for a Champions League spot with Manchester United, Chelsea, Newcastle, who are coming up as well. Brentford are still there. So they're rolling the dice on a possible Champions League qualification when the top 3 places are looking further and further away from us. And there's 1, maybe 2 places to go. I don't know, lads. That doesn't seem clever to me. And it doesn't seem acceptable when the goal was domination. And domination was the word. Domestically, anyway. Craig, are you heading back to FSG out? No, honestly, no. Like, I'm not coming in tonight to start sitting here saying, where's the money, John? I'm not. I only brought up the question on the FSG thing because of the Elliott and Gay thing. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll read these 2 posts out to you again just so you have a bit more context. But no, I'm not getting to that point where I'm FSG out, where's the money, John, and all. But I am getting a bit annoyed at the lack of clear, concise decision making. I get annoyed at it being framed as bravery when it feels more like stupidity. So Paul Joyce said Liverpool hoped, by the way, is the key word there, hoped, that Mark Gay would recognise the efforts they made to sign him before the plug was pulled on deadline day, and in turn that he waited for them till the summer. They'd hoped. Not they kept in communication, not that they were willing to match what Manchester City were offering to Crystal Palace, that they hoped that the player that they were willing to pay £35 million for would join them on a free. Hoped. Didn't react when Manchester City did. Now, how much do you think Mark Gay really felt wanted there by Liverpool at that point? Paul Joyce then goes on to say, in a different post, Liverpool had banked on receiving £35 million from Elliott sale this summer after bending over backwards in arranging the structure for his loan deal. So, what I hear there is that Liverpool fucked up and agreed to a deal that ended up shafting us after bending over backwards. They could have got rid of the backwards part and just said Liverpool got bent over, because that would have felt more appropriate here. Elliott, we knew this in the summer, and you all heard it, had the choice of multiple clubs. Clubs from Germany were queuing up. Liverpool could have had money in their back pocket right now for Harvey Elliott, but they chose to send him to Villa, and they put in the clause, they agreed to it, and that clause is now biting us in the ass. It's not clever. Again, these are the geniuses operating in the shadows, in Hughes and Edwards, that are supposed to be the smartest guys in the room. Well, how's that working out? Because one of our players, who we still have a duty of care about, is sitting on Aston Villa, not even getting minutes. And now we're complaining that we don't have the money. Whose fault is it that we don't have the money? It's our own fucking fault. If a player can't see the vision of LFC, then he wasn't a player for us. His loss, not ours. No, it is our loss. It is very much our loss. So, if you're Mark Gay, and this winds me up, this, we're Liverpool, everybody should just do what we want shit. You're Mark Gay, and yes, you nearly signed for us in the summer. But come on. If you hear Crystal Palace had an offer from Manchester City, and Liverpool didn't come to the table to match that offer, and your chairman's in your ear saying it'll help our club, it'll help Crystal Palace go out there to buy another centre-back by getting a fee, isn't that he doesn't see the vision of the club. is that he knows Liverpool didn't really want him that much and that they were willing to try to get him on a free in the summer out of cheapness. That's the truth of it. We talked about this with Trent in the other direction as well, and I said it so many times. If Real Madrid really wanted Trent that much, would they have paid £70 million for him if he had 2 or 3 years to go? And the answer is no. They only signed him because they were getting him on the cheap. And it feels like we were the same with Mark A. So that's why I don't like to hear any fingers being pointed at Mark A in this situation, because I don't think he's to blame for this. I think the blame lies from within our own failures. Bobby said, looking back, such a bad planned summer window. I still struggle to really... Look, there are some parts of the summer window that are a confusing one. Like, I'd love to know how much energy and focus was still going into signing Isak after we got after we got Hugo Ekitike, versus how much energy and scope was going into the other deficiencies in the squad that we had, which of course was centre-back, maybe central defensive midfielder. So I'd love to know that, because going into the summer transfer window, before anything else had happened or we made signings, if we all sat down as a fan base and said, right, where do Liverpool need to strengthen? Centre-back would have been right up there at the very top. Now, we brought in a young centre-back, and what we don't know is how that season would have gone from this year. Would he have really been playing 30 games? We don't know. We know he looked very impressive in the 87 or 85 minutes we've seen him against, I think, Southampton in the League Cup. And we know he picked up a horrific injury that's ruled him out for the season. But we don't know if it would have been another situation like Rio Engamoa, where he was brought in for the future, but wasn't really ready to be playing every week in the here and now. But he'd been injured, so our centre-back situation's gotten worse, and we now are closer to knowing that Canade doesn't want to be here, or that we at least won't reach an agreement with him, because he's now at a point where he can talk to other clubs, and we don't have to know about it. So right now we have Joe Gomez, who the club are willing to sell, and he knows that. We have Canade, who doesn't seem to want to be here, and our 34-year-old captain. And I'm supposed to believe that we think we're a club that can challenge on all competitions with that depth. The reason Arsenal are top of the league at the minute is that depth. Yes, of course, it's down to the players, the manager as well. But depth is a big part of it. Is that there is no catastrophic fall off there. Imagine Virgil got an injury tomorrow. Do you think the Champions League's still possible then? I don't. Even if Canade got an injury, we're up shit creek. And there are even conversations now where people are trying to say that Endo coming back is a great big bonus for Arne. I'm not joking you, they're trying to write that in the Echo. That Endo coming back could somehow be a bit of a problem solver for Arne Slot. The same lad that wasn't really getting minutes anyway and was only getting closing out minutes here and there could somehow be like a new signing. Been there, bought the t-shirt, seen it, had enough of it. Andre, how are you, sir? Thank you, by the way, Andre. Very kind of you. Let's assume Alonso is our next. In principle, the formation will be 3-4-3. That means 6 centre-backs in the squad. We need 1 now, and we're not getting it. What's the board get them? Excuse me. Will this board get them for Alonso in 1 window, or is that a long shot? So, the answer to that is I don't know, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they are willing to do it in 1 window. Now, juxtapose that with the idea of having a centre-back brought in now that could be bedded into the club before the new manager comes in. Because if we go out and sign, let's say, 3 centre-backs, and we could debate a little bit about whether you need 5 or 6 for the system. I think 5 is the minimum, but 6, I think, is the sweet spot. But I think it'd be greedy of me to sit here and expect 6. But I would expect 5 centre-backs, yes. Now, Going and getting 3 of them in one window is probably not going to happen for many, many reasons. So why not get one now? Like I've said, that's where the sporting director's role is supposed to be, in that they look past the head coach and they look longer term. So Mark Gay coming in would have been brilliant. But if it wasn't him, get a centre-back now, because we need one. And the next manager will need one, and probably more, as you've correctly said, Andre. Whitney said, could FSG hear us undermining Slot and for that reason hesitate to get Mark? I doubt it, Whitney. I doubt it, because either way you look at it, like, one of the things that was being posted was that Manchester City feel that they have a £70 million centre-back that they got for 20 million quid. So, what we have missed out on, for whatever reason, is an established English international who's homegrown, Premier League proven, for £20 million plus signing on fee. And yes, the wages, but we can afford the wages. So that's what we've missed out on, is a cast iron guarantee of somebody who knows the league, knows what it's like, is a very good character and human being, and a damn good defender that can play in the back 3. So would also lead into Alonso in the future. So I just think whoever made the decision, and again, Whitney, I don't know if this is an FSG alone decision, or I would say it's probably more a Hughes and Edwards decision. Because one of the arguments I used to have with David Lynch quite a bit was that he used to talk about Edwards and Hughes being empowered. And I used to say, well, there's not much empowering going on with they're not being given them the ability to spend money. And this summer, that money was spent. So I started to then think, okay, had David got a point about that empowerment of Hughes and Edwards? So in this situation, I have to believe that it was a Hughes and Edwards decision not to make that recruitment signing. Now, they could have been told that the money was a bit tight or whatever, but that's kind of where my head's at with it, Whitney, that it was a conscious decision from those two not to do it. And even if the Elliott money was the thing, you know you can still sell Elliott. You got to tell me that we can't get 20 million quid for Elliott in the summer? That would have covered the 20 million quid that you'd have to pay for Mark Gay's transfer fee. And look, I know that's oversimplifying the whole deal, but, you know, none of it just makes sense to me about how you suddenly wanted somebody, you want them again in the next summer, but when your need is dire and it's only 20 million quid, we didn't go out there to do it. You know, look around us. Teams that want to win make signings when they need them. Last January, Manchester City went out there and emptied the tank and spent a load of dough. This January, they did the same thing. They needed another attacker, bang, Antoine Semenyo, 65 million clause, done. Needed a centre-back because of an injury picked up, bang, Mark Gay, there you go. Us, not so much. Explain how the loss to PSV last year made us get PSG. No problem. So, if you look at the format last season of the Champions League, it's that PSV points tally of beating us and the 3 points they gained pushed them up in the rankings and dropped Paris Saint-Germain down to the level that we got to play them, to the position in the format that we played them. If we had have beaten PSV, Paris Saint-Germain wouldn't have been there. So that's how that result ended up fucking us. I know, I totally understand why you're asking the question and why you probably think it's a bit of a weird statement, but that's why. Because we went over there and yes, our business was done at that point, and we couldn't have possibly foreseen this going forward. But I'm just telling you how the knock-on effect came of dropping those points and going over and losing to PSV Eindhoven. Is those points pushed them up and dropped PSG down, which means that's where we ended up playing. Yeah. But again, fair question, mate. No problem with that. Thank you, Vimudu, for the fist bump emoji. Appreciate you. Liam Murphy as well. Thank you, bro. Appreciate you. Michael said, call me nostalgic. Nothing wrong with a bit of nostalgic, mate, or a bit of nostalgia, sorry. How I wish Jurgen would come back for 3 years and manage this team and players. Yeah, that's something I think we've all debated in our head a little bit, Michael, you know? And sometimes I play that out and I think, yeah, that'd be great. And then other times I think, but what if Jurgen came back and it wasn't as great as it was the first time? I wouldn't want his legacy to be in any way tainted. You know, we might say that's not possible, but, you know, a run of bad results at the end of it maybe would leave you with a bit of a lesser sweet taste in your mouth. So, yeah, but, you know, what I'd say there is, if we're talking about the nostalgia, just remember the feeling that you felt when he was there. You know, put aside the results, put aside everything else, just the connection you felt to a man that you felt got it and cared as much as you do. And all people are built differently and express themselves differently. Just because somebody's not outwardly emotional doesn't mean they don't care. But there's something that connects a fan base to a manager that you can see is living and breathing it as much as you are. Or at least think that they're living and breathing it as much as you are. So, do you think FSG are cheap owners is the question. And again, this isn't because Craig's trying to become an FSG out, where's the money John Merchant again. It's trying to figure out how the fuck we're here and how we haven't got a centre-back in, and then those two things from Paul Joyce. Now, I want to read you a little bit more from Paul Joyce. And this gives insight into perhaps how bad it is and it's going to get. So let me read this through and then I'll try to tie it together. So, again, this piece from Paul Joyce said, should Canade leave on a free transfer, are 2 new centre-backs needed, allowing for the reluctance to give Joe Gomez minutes, which is in part due to his fitness issues, are 2 necessary regardless. Is the current midfield ready to push to reclaim the title next season, or does it need strengthening? Will Curtis Jones, who'd been attracting interest from Spurs, feel it's time to be more of a guaranteed starter somewhere? Costas is due to return from a loan spell with Roma and may become the backup to Milos Kerkez if Andy Robertson departs when his contract expires in 5 months. But that is not a long-term solution. Like Gomez and Virgil van Dijk, Costas' contract is up in 2027. And that's before we get to the future of Slot, who heard the final whistle on Saturday, followed by boos. This is the part I want you to pay attention to. Sporting Director Richard Hughes and the CEO of Football for Liverpool Owners, FSG, Michael Edwards, they all have 18 months to run on their contracts. So with our football club, ladies and gentlemen, we don't know the future of Salah. We don't know the future of Andy Robertson, whose contract's up in a few months. We don't know the future of Ibrahim Kanade, who could or could not be part of the long-term future of the club at centre-back moving forward. The manager, his future is unknown. And the 2 guys making the fucking decisions, futures are unknown. Now, what about that screams stability? Nothing. So, who is really thinking, looking, acting in the best interest long term? Because you've seen what we read through there. Lists of players. Questions about Gomez and his future. Costas and his future. Robertson and his future. All of this doesn't paint a picture of a club that really is as clever as they're made out to be in the public and as held up as the smartest guys in the room. I don't feel like this is smartest guys in the room kind of stuff. Do you get me? So this is why I feel like maybe things are actually a bit worse than we think. And what worse is, I really don't know. Is worse that maybe this was a once-off spend? Is worse that FSG are stressed that maybe Edwards and Hughes won't be around? Is there real disagreement over the manager's future? So I just think things behind the scenes are nowhere near as rosy as we're being made to believe they are. Because how could they be with all of this uncertainty? And remember, all of this comes off the back of a time where we've seen players' contracts be run down. Where's the planning there? It would be blamed on Schmadtke and Klopp because they're easy scapegoats. But ultimately, they're going to come and go from the club anyway. And long-term stability, that does lie with the owners and their thinking. So how was Canade, Virgil, Salah, Trent? How were all those contracts? Firmino. How were all them contracts allowed to run down and players just go? That's not clever. And for a club that wants to make every penny count, not cashing in on some of those players to bring back in money doesn't feel very clever. So I really am starting to feel like, is this the emperor's clothing kind of situation, you know? Inside, we're thinking we look great, but outside, people are looking through the silk and thinking, there's nothing there. Craig, can you mention about Paul Joyce's report about Hughes and Edwards ending in 18 months? I just did. I just spoke about it. So Hughes, Edwards and Slot all have 18 months to go on their deals. So all their futures are in one weird way or another inextricably linked. So what happens there? There's a lot of uncertainty around our club longer term now. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out where I was. This one. Craig, in the Premier League, last 10 games form guide, we are 5th. We're a missed penalty and a Harrison Reed goal away from being in the top of that form guide. Would you think differently knowing that? No, I wouldn't. Because it's hypotheticals. He did score that goal. We didn't close him down. We did miss that penalty. You know, we can go back to the very start of the season and say, what if all of those first 5 games that we won, if we hadn't have found late equalisers? You know, it's ifs, ands and buts, mate. The fact of the matter is we are where we are. And the points we've dropped, respectfully, we shouldn't be dropping. We should be beating Sunderland at home, Leeds at home. That should be no problem. We should be beating Burnley at home. So yeah, others around us are dropping points, and this was a weekend where everyone dropped points in the top 4. But again, I'm measuring off the expectation that we had to go into the season, the talent we have available, and I don't feel we're making the most of that talent. Like, there's not one part of me that thinks Aston Villa squad's better than ours. Not one part of me. But clearly their coaching is. Lebris, the guy that came with Sunderland, when we had to hear about too many changes, well, they had 14 new players signed. They were still able to put up a performance that looked cohesive because they were better coached. So again, these things to me, mate, they're hypotheticals, but it's right up there with what if he wins the Champions League. It's possible, but it's most likely not going to happen. Pig in a poke is a medieval phrase, means don't buy crap by mistake. Come on, Craig, I'm just an American. Sorry, I didn't. I'd heard the phrase, like, I'd heard someone say pig in a poke, but I never knew what it meant, Whitney. So yeah, but thank you. You learn something new every day, as they say, and I've certainly learned that today. But all these matches are down to the players, not the manager. So, what's your name again? Sorry, DJ Mickey Finn. There's definitely something. But mate, I'm not excusing the players, you know, but we all know how football works. And if we want to blame the players as well, cool. But you're not exactly holding them players to account, are you? So if you're Arne Slot and you're feeling like the players are letting you down, well, you're not exactly dropping any of them, are you? And you're not really holding them to account for the poor performances. And you might say you can't hold Canade to account, but the only reason we couldn't hold him to account is because we don't have enough centre-backs, which again comes back to a bigger problem. So yeah, of course the players need to take some responsibility for it. But again, look at Manchester United. Those were the same players that couldn't really get the fire in their belly under Amorim. But Michael Carrick came into the dressing room and reminded them what it was to be a United player and wear that shirt. Look at the Derby performance they put in. So sometimes players aren't motivated or aren't feeling it. And ultimately, unfortunately, in football, the way things go, it's always a manager who's the one that's gone. Because you can't go into a dressing room and sack 10 players. You can move them out over the course of time, of course. But ultimately, it's a manager who suffers in these situations. And even with some underperforming players, I still think, God damn it, look at the team, the squad we have, and the quality that's there, and we should be better than where we are now. Chris said, James Pearce has always been an FSG stooge. I swear he sits in front of a photo of John W. Henry knocking one out. So, I've always, up until probably in the last 6 months, always, I won't say defended James Pearce, because that he doesn't need defending, but I've always felt he was on the club's side, but I felt like he never really put his nose into the stuff that was fan debate led, if you get me. He's more, I always said this about James Pearce. James Pearce's best work for me is when he's talking about the information that comes out after a signings come in and breaks down, how that happened, the story building up to it, stuff like that. And that's where he relies on that inside information that the club give him, because that access gets him that. But at this point and lately, I think there's been a change of tune with James Pearce. And I came back to the thing I keep saying that I kept the receipts for, which was the post, because he's veered into the territory of, I think, being snidey to some extent towards fans with some of the wordings of his posts. The one that I keep bringing up is one that I'm going to bring up again now in a second, which is this one. Arna went through a few games where we started to do somewhat decently, and James Pearce said, those with short memories and little patience who were calling for change have been muted as Slot has breathed new life into a managerial reign which had veered so alarmingly off course. Now, yesterday, he's talking about it looking bad. That's the type of stuff that's winding me up about James Pearce, because I don't mind somebody being very club-centric. The part, and you can see this consistently over my streams, the part that gets to me and that gets me angry about it is when those same people start to talk down to the fan base and think that they're above reproach and that the rest of us are all idiots. Because sometimes we get taken for idiots. And stuff like that is elitist bollocks, which has, in my opinion, no journalistic integrity to it. It's just sneering and snide. Those with short memories. No, people with opinions. Fans, James, Whitney said, if Ekitike got hurt instead, we'd be screaming if we didn't have Isak. So, I'm certainly not trying to say, Whitney, that we shouldn't have signed Isak. We needed 2 strikers. That's absolutely apparent. The tragedy with Diogo and Darwin being moved on. I'm not trying to say we didn't need. I loved that we signed Isak. What I'm trying to say, Whitney, or what I was trying to say, mate, was the energy that went into that deal. If I find it difficult to believe that Liverpool went into the window expecting to drop £200 million on 2 strikers. I feel like they thought it would go that Ekitike went somewhere else, maybe Newcastle, and they come in to get Isak. Then I really feel like it was, okay, well, Newcastle aren't really playing ball here with Isak, so let's go get Hugo Ekitike, who was on our list. But none of them really feel like a striker that's willing to sit on the bench, if you get me. Like, if you're going to play in a system, we don't really play with 2 strikers. So, one of those 2, of whoever the strikers was probably going to be the main guy. And then the other one, a very good backup. If we looked at Darwin and Diogo, as an example, you would say that Darwin was the headline signing for the big money fee. And that Diogo was the very able deputy that came in and more than did his bit. May he rest in peace. But that's the kind of thing I'm trying to say, Whitney, is did we put too much attention into maybe the one thing that somebody really wanted and ignored another area? I'm not trying to say we did need 2 strikers, mate, because we absolutely did. Nick said, "Hi Craig, a pleasure to be on this journey with you." Thank you, Nick. Appreciate that. Slot wins the title. We invest $450 million. We start sucking, and the purse gets closed. Just seems the logic, or seems like logic. Excuse me. So Whitney, the whole point of the system with a sporting director is to remove that exact scenario you're talking about. So years ago, it used to be that a manager was the manager, and the manager ran all aspects of the football side of the club. You know, the manager would talk to the owner about the signings, the manager would coach the team, the manager would talk with the scouts, the manager would be all encompassing. But of course, as modern football comes about and media duties come about and so many other things start getting introduced, a manager's job has been stretched too much. And also, it's a big problem then if a manager goes, because you have to rebuild a whole structure that's gone. Just look at what happened at Manchester United after Sir Alex Ferguson left. So the whole philosophy and structure of having a sporting director is that if a head coach, Arna in this case, isn't cutting the mustard, he can be removed, but the system stays intact. The long-term decision making is done by somebody who is above that person, but has the future of the club at heart. The footballing philosophy is set by Richard Hughes from the bottom of the football club all the way to the top of the football club. And that's supposed to be the constant. So if a manager fails, it isn't as big of an upheaval to take the coach out, drop them and bring in a new one. That's the whole point of the system and the structure and the way we have it. So to hear that because Arna's failing, the owners decide not to spend more money, I don't think that really washes, because it doesn't make sense. Now, if they feel like maybe Edwards and Hughes aren't doing it, then maybe we have that conversation. But yeah, it's not the manager that they really back in a sporting director sense. It's the sporting director's vision that they back. Ian said, "I think history is repeating itself. Remember the game in 10-11 season when Gerrard looked at Roy Hodgson and missed a penalty to get him sacked? So I'll never, ever, ever believe anybody misses a penalty intentionally. But I know the scenario that you're speaking about. And it happens all the time. Players' performances dip, somebody else comes in, and then all of a sudden things start to appear better. So that's why I feel like with the fans not being on side, with at least some of the dressing room not really buying into it, and you can see what stuff Mac has come out with. And imagine if you're a young Calvin Ramsey now and you're hearing the manager saying I have better options there, even though he's struggling for options at right back and you're not wanted by one of them. You know, your Rio Engamoa that the club fought really hard to get in from Chelsea, and, you know, don't block the pathway by sending a replacement to Luis Diaz, and yet he's not getting minutes. Just a lot of the stuff just isn't adding up. Raekwon, how are we, dude? Hey Craig, every time I go to a Liverpool supporters club, everybody is disgusted by Slot, and there's low confidence for Marseille on Wednesday. Also, why did the club prioritise Leone over Gay? Lot to unpack there, Raekwon. What you're saying about supporters clubs, this is what I keep saying. Like, some journalists try to paint a picture of outside fans, online fans, social media fans are the ones that are very toxic and opinionated. But the match-going fans are far more cultured, far more civil, far more patient, far more supportive of the manager. But that's not the case. They don't support the style of football with the manager. They hate it. And your experience of going to supporters clubs is echoed out by everyone I speak to. Because whether you're a match-going fan or a non-match-going fan, a season ticket holder or a non-season ticket holder, everybody feels bored and frustrated by the style of football that we're seeing from Arna. So you're not wrong about that. It is widespread, and that's why I think it's unfixable, because it's turned too far. Now, we can talk about the timing of getting rid of the manager and when's best to do that. That's a different conversation. But I'm not going to have it for 1 second that any journalist that writes something along the lines of Arne Slot still retains the backing of the Liverpool board, bullshit. He most certainly does not. If he retained the backing of the Liverpool board as much as some people are trying to say, then how has he not got a new deal? If he's being so backed and they've no doubts about his vision and the future, where's that new deal that was being talked about at the end of the summer? that was being worked on for the manager. It's gone awfully quiet, hasn't it? For somebody who retains the full backing of the ownership. If he was that backed, you'd put the contract on the table and sign it and say, we know we're right, we're backing this man, but they haven't done that because they don't trust them. Just get 2 centre-backs and Xabi, and we're back at the top. We need 2 centre-backs, but I'm intrigued to see what happens with Salah now. Because, can I give you my thought process? And it is just a thought process. It isn't something I'm trying to state as a fact. In my head, Salah comes back. Arna probably plays him immediately because he needs the win and he needs the PR. But if results aren't going great or Mohamed Salah isn't getting played, I think Arna's situation gets worse a lot quicker. So I'm intrigued to see what happens there, because I don't think that situation's finished at all. And then we still need more signings, yes. But I don't know anybody that would say right now we don't need a player. You know, we might be on different sides of this conversation and a lot of stuff, but if I said to you right now, do Liverpool need to bring in a player? I think most of you would say yes. But we aren't doing it. And this feels like the old us that isn't learning from the mistakes of not bringing in players when we need them. We can speculate as to why that is. A lack of trust in the manager. A lack of trust in Hughes and Edwards. I don't really buy the targets not being available, which would have been the usual excuses, because we've just seen Mark A was available and has gone elsewhere. We've seen Xhaka is available and Chelsea are trying to get him. But what we haven't seen is Liverpool put in a bid or make a move for a single centre-back. So if you really did want to win the Champions League this year or salvage something from the season, you'd be doing everything you can to give the manager the best foundation, or the club the best foundation to go and do that. But we're not. VI Joker said, sorry, this is not a football question, but have you watched Landman? Oh, I love it, mate. Yeah, I love it. Every Sunday or Monday, because the new episode comes out on a Sunday. But usually on a Monday evening, myself and Sabrina sit down and watch the new episode. Yeah, love it. Love it, absolutely. I didn't think I'd love it even more than Yellowstone, but I think I do. Yeah. And the casting is brilliant in it. But yeah, definitely a show I would have on my watch list. Mark Harding said, the disconnect between sporting director and coach is huge. It's the reason why Slot doesn't want Chiesa. It's a failed formula. Now, on that disconnect, I want to go back to a piece that Ben Spolchak wrote a few weeks ago that he got a bit of grief for, but I stand over Ben's piece and I stand with him on it. And the piece was that there was a fallout behind the scenes, or as he said, civil war, between Hughes and the manager over Rio Ngamoa. And it doesn't take too much to think that might be true, based off the big hurrah when we got him versus the minutes that we're seeing. And the argument in Ben's piece was that the manager wanted a here and now player like a Barcola rather than somebody like a Rio Ngamoa. So that disconnect certainly feels like it's there. Whether it's quite to the extent of a civil war behind the scenes or not, it is speculation from my part, because Benz will have his own information, his own source, and I don't know who that is. So, I'll leave that to Benz to answer any questions on that one. But there does feel like there's a disconnect. So, if it's quite to that extreme, I'm not sure. But I do agree with you, Mark, in that, yes, there is that disconnect there. Brian, firstly, as always, my friend, thank you so much for your incredible kindness. And while we're speaking of kindness, and just before I read out Brian's comment on this one, we're just about €420 away now from helping Adam and Dylan achieve their dreams of going to take part in the European Championship. So, as you can see, Adam and Dylan have been selected to represent Team Ireland in the European Championships, which will be held in Serbia next year. Adam and Dylan are twins who are competing on the MMA circuit for a number of years, and to be picked again to represent their country means the world to them. Unfortunately, MMA isn't a recognised sport in Ireland, which means funding isn't available. And by recognised, we mean funded. This means that the family have to raise the money for the guys to be able to do it. Now, Adam is a multiple time Irish champion, European champion, and World Championship runner-up who lives in my hometown. The family do. And I've gotten to know them over the last few months. And the reason we're getting behind Adam so much and helping to try and raise this money is that I truly believe this kid will be in the UFC. I truly believe that this is the very type of guy that local people here should be getting behind, because he's up every day at 5 o'clock running before school. He's sitting his final exams in school this year. He's training in the evening. He doesn't eat crappy food. He is exactly the example of a young lad that you would want your son, your nephew, or your friend to be. That's why we believe so wholly in Adam and hope that we can get him to the European Championships to defend his title. We're so close. We're about €400 away. If you can help out at all, please do. And again, thank you for your time. Brian, my man, said, I heard that Gay reached out to Liverpool when Manchester City made their offer to see what if we could come in, as he wanted Liverpool, and also said he was not looking for the wages from us that Manchester City paid. He received no response. Any truth there? So, I have to say that what I'm about to say, I heard secondhand. Not from one of my own sources that I'd put my neck on the line for, but I heard a situation that, yes, he was inquired as to whether, Liverpool did. Because remember, even James Pearson, his piece in the summer that I brought up yesterday, said Mark Gay's dream move was basically stalled and not ended. So, like I said, a lot of people, Brian, have been pointing a finger at Mark Gay over the last 24 hours and saying, but if he really wanted us, he'd have waited. And he went to City, so he obviously didn't care that much. I've always thought about this differently, because we know Mark Gay cared about Crystal Palace as he captained them. We know what it meant to win a trophy with them. We know that he sincerely has a place in his heart for that football club. And he has a chairman that would have said to him, look, there's an offer on the table right now from Manchester City. We haven't heard from Liverpool, but there's an offer on the table right now from Manchester City that would allow us to replace you, as hard as that's going to be. But rather than losing you in the summer for nothing, it would give us £20 million to go out into the market to try to bring in a replacement to help this club go forward. And then Mark Gay had this decision to make. And I also do wholeheartedly believe, Brian, that yes, he would have taken less money to come and play for us. And that's why I push back so much against that narrative of 300 grand a week, and that being any kind of a reason why Liverpool stayed away. Because if we signed him in the summer on a free, he would have been getting upwards of 250 grand a week, and he certainly would have got a hefty signing on fee. So I think there's a strong possibility of what you've heard being correct, but I can't say it definitively. But again, I don't think this was Mark A sticking two fingers up to us by any means. If anything, I think it was the other way around, and us showing him that actually maybe we aren't as committed to you as we should be, or we made out to be. That's the way I think about it. Tanya said, I go to the matches and I can assure you that's wrong. So, sorry, Tanya, I'm not really, bear with me. I'm not really sure what you mean by I can assure you that's wrong, Tanya, because I'm not sure what you're answering me in relation to, mate. Sorry. If it's, I'm guessing you mean it's something like the fans not being behind the manager is I'm wrong on that, or the statement that I think you're either agreeing or disagreeing with me that those inside the stadium are behind or not behind the manager, I think. But my experience again, I'm second guessing what you're saying here somewhat. My experience, Tanya, has been that the match going fans that I know, whether they go every week or whether they've gone over for a couple of trips over the last few months, and those around them aren't happy with what they're seeing. But like I said, I don't want to go too deep into it until I see. I'll keep an eye out for your comments in the chat there, and I'll be able to know further what you actually did mean. Tamer said, it's like driving a car with a flat tyre and the spare is in the trunk. You know how to change the rim, but it gets destroyed. And now 10-minute fix becomes a total loss. That's our club in a paragraph. It's a good analogy. Because there are fixes that look like they're straightforward fixes. But like you've said, it feels like we've said, nah, feck it, we'll get home. You know, we'll limp the car home. But like you said, we got home then, we look at it and shit, the rims are destroyed. And that's a whole new alloy needed there then. Yeah. Brian said GoFundMe goal reached. Oh, have you been a bold boy again, Brian? That's so incredible, Brian. Thank you. And Adam wants to come up, by the way, and say thank you to everyone in the video. So we'll be doing something with Adam anyway, so we can say thank you to everyone. But that's absolutely incredible. Thank you to everyone that helped to get Adam there to where he needs to be. That will, yeah. I know right now his mum would have got an alert, Brian, to say goal reached and your sons are going to defend their titles in the European Championships. Thank you, bro. Love you to bits. Thank you. Mane won the AFCON. Nice. Congratulations to Sadio and to Senegal. Must have been tough that in Morocco. You know, I think they would have been. Is it either they would have won it for the first time in 50 years, or it would have been the first time in 50 years that the home team won it. But commiserations to Morocco and congratulations to Senegal. Also, unfortunately, yesterday, Mo and Egypt lost a penalty shootout to Nigeria. So they didn't win the bronze match either, unfortunately. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Salah and Marmoush both missed their penalties. I think they took the first two and they both missed them. And Nigeria won on penalty. So commiserations to Mo. But in a selfish way, you know, we're glad to have him back with Liverpool soon. And again, Brian, man, thank you so much. You don't know, honestly, you do not know what that'll mean. My phone will be lighting up this evening from his family and others to help him out. You're an absolute superstar. So, Tanya, sorry, I was to keep an eye out for your comment, mate, because I wanted to just see what we were discussing. I got sidetracked with the Brian stuff, Tanya, sorry. Just trying to see what we were disagreeing on. Don't think you've had a chance to post in yet, Tanya, unless I've missed it, my friend. So apologies if I have. But yeah, I'm just trying to see what you said was you go to the matches, so I can assure you that's wrong. I'm not sure what you meant by that, mate. Cool. So if Tanya does post or anything to answer to, do let me know, because I'd like to respond properly to Tanya. Oh, there she is now. Oh, okay. So I'm going to skip a few super chats to bring this one back up. All fans are fed up, even folks that go to the matches. Thank you. I did think that's where you were coming from, Tanya, because I know that you're a match-going fan yourself. And yeah, I'm glad that you're seeing the same. Oh, I'm not glad. There's nothing to be glad about in this scenario, but at least your real world lived experience is echoing what I'm hearing as well, which is that the fans that go to the match, they're just not happy with what they're seeing. Like, I'm in chat said, is the Premier League very extra competitive now? Like, whoever can be whoever at this point. Results are a roll of the dice. Still not an excuse for drawing or losing games. We should be winning, though. So the Premier League has always been intriguing because of the very thing that you've said, mate. I think even Arna came in when he joined us and he said something along the lines of, in other leagues, or, you know, if you go 1 or 2-0 up, you can almost coast through a game and get yourself over the line. But you're right, the Premier League's really competitive. And in any week, on any given day, if you're not at it, anybody can beat anybody. And that's why, you know, in the last few years, it has been survival of the fittest, and whoever can show consistency over the course of the season has won league titles. Arsenal some Arsenal fans tried to belittle our league title last year by saying it was just a poor league because the points tallies were low. But you could make an equal argument to that this year, and I don't think either of the arguments are valid, because you win the league, you win the league. You know, it shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter to you what others do. If you win the league, you win the league. Well done, and you deserve to celebrate it. But you are right, man. It is a tough league, and if you're not at it, small margins. That's what underlines my point, though, bro, about not keeping this manager. Because if the small margins are what we're talking about, you need everybody to be at it. And if the players are even 10% off, or somewhat subconsciously holding back, or not fully believing in what the manager's saying, it can have a knock-on effect, and results can go the way they are. So a lot of people have been writing about something yesterday that stuck with me overnight, and I agree with. And it's that we actually played okay in that first 45 minutes against Burnley yesterday. And I said so in my watch-along. We seemed to be moving the ball quicker. We seemed to have a bit more intensity about us. We were shifting them across a bit more, varying up our attacks a little bit. But, and this is where the but does come in, as soon as a moment of hardship came our way, we weren't able to cope. And that is a big defining difference from a team that believes truly that they're going to do it. Like, I remember Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain on Fozcast saying that under Jurgen, it didn't matter where they were. Santiago Bernabeu, Camp Nou, didn't matter. You're going out on that pitch ready to go to war and believe in every single thing the manager says to you. You will be the better guy. You will do this. He sees the manager fist pump him when he's coming back doing his defensive work. All of that stuff is why Jurgen burned out. Because that's what it takes. That's what is needed to get the buy-in. Especially if you're trying to punch above your weight with maybe not the ability to be as flashy in the market as others. You need to get every ounce out of your players. And Arne is not doing that. And I don't think it's going to be able to. How many times have you seen a manager, a coach fired from any club, and then all of a sudden somebody else comes in, whether in an interim role or not, and we talk about new manager bounce? Why do you think the new manager bounce exists? It's partly because they know they now have to fucking prove themselves again to the new guy, and also because they're kind of happy that the guy, some of them, that they weren't happy with is gone. It's one of these great things that we don't ever talk about the negative side of. We only ever talk about the positive side of. In that the new manager bounce means players play better. But we never really dive deeply into why they don't play better, which is that they probably weren't doing all that they could before. Subconsciously or consciously. You know, I don't believe it's an accident that players suddenly start playing better. Again, United are a good example yesterday. That's the same Manchester United that had stinkers. But somebody, like Carrick, was able to go in there. So that's why I've said so far over the last few months, sack Slot. And even if you are bringing in somebody like a Gerrard, who has no long-term future, at least he will be able to get the fire in the belly and get things going in the right direction. And maybe salvaging some of those relationships. Do you remember when Steven Gerrard was asked about Mohamed Salah and dropping him? He was basically saying, I wouldn't be dropping him. It's Salah. You play these guys. Some other journalist said the likes of Mohamed Salah will refuse to sit there and see inferior players to them, and Cody Gakpo was the version used in this, playing. These are the things that I say that we don't really ever delve deep into because we just focus on the bounce, the upside of it. But there is an underlying reason why the manager got fired in the first place. And that's why I'm so strong about getting rid of Arne now, rather than having the hope that he can salvage something from the season. I want us to be proactive and taking hold of the situation. Stargirl said, went from the joys of winning the league to this. Yeah, and in such a short space of time. I've never gone into a season feeling so optimistic and so, I'm going to say cocky, because I was feeling a bit cocky, with what we'd done. You know, we'd won the league and we'd gone out there and we brought in players that we were all like, holy shit. Isak, Wirtz, Ekatike, Frimpong? Yes, please. Milos Kerkez? Absolutely. So we went out and we did those things and we were all flying high. All of us. Full of optimism, full of dreams. How does that feel right now? And this again is why I keep coming back to the stance of rewriting and revisionism. The goals were set at the start of the season and the goals weren't the ones that we're talking about now. And we've slipped so far that we're a club that talks about standards and doing things the right way and the history and the tradition. Where are the standards now? Why is the manager not being held to the standards? Why are some of the players not being held to the standards? This team has gone backwards with investment, not forwards. It doesn't make sense. Something smells wrong, feels wrong about it. Brian said, I felt the same, but honestly, last quarter of last season gave me pause. I was at times questioning my own frustration at the end of last season, Brian, because I was sitting here and we were coasting through a few games and losing games, and people were saying to me, and look, I totally get why they were saying it. We've won the league, relax. You know, we've won the league, relax. And of course, I understand that. But that's not what top level sport's about. You can't switch these things on and off. You ask any professional athlete who excels at their sport, Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, any of them, they don't do it some of the time. They do it all of the time. And that's the difference. That's why they are where they are. And others are good, but not quite there. Because they will have that morning where they look out and it's cold. And they think, Jesus, you know what, I could probably get away with one day not going out for a run. No, that'd be the guy who gets up and goes out for the run. So that's why last season, like you said, Brian, when you started to question it, I wasn't happy with it. But I was at least understanding of why others were saying to me, calm down, Craig, relax. Like, I get it. They weren't being unreasonable. But I knew that it was going to have a knock-on impact, because you can't just go from full intensity to low intensity to back to full intensity like that. And also we talk about the importance of pre-seasons as well, which is why not bringing in Mark A or a defender of starting quality early in the window confused the fuck out of me. Because we all know managers want as much time in the training ground with players as possible. That's what they want, and understandably. So again, lots of this stuff just doesn't make sense, and it definitely did start at the end of last season. We lost the League Cup to Newcastle, and it was a very weird time, that, because remember, we hadn't got to the Isak situation yet, so there wasn't that hostility as much between us and the Newcastle fans. So we lost that final. And I can't speak for everybody, but there was almost a sense of, well, if we were to lose the final to anyone, let it be a team like Newcastle, who've waited so long, who have a good fan base, and they have their moment, and it's a League Cup. So we lost, and it sucks, but we didn't lose to a Man City or an Arsenal. It was almost like a secondary happiness that Newcastle, a club that many of us were fond of, had done something, and the city exploded with joy. And you could see what it meant. And football, you could see the value of football to a community there. And they were treated like heroes. But deep down, I was still thinking he was outmanaged there and out-thought there. And how do you have Alexis McAllister, Mac and Dan Burn on corners? There were still signs and warnings of stuff that we weren't happy about. Then you've got the Champions League stuff, like I've said. And I don't have any problem with a manager complimenting opposition. But I said it at the time and I say it again now. I feel like Arne Slot went into that with an inferiority complex to take on Paris Saint-Germain. Because while we were here and our manager was talking about how great they were, their players were talking about the confidence they had to come to Anfield to overturn the deficit and get the job done. And they did it. I didn't like hearing that from our manager. And I felt like he did have an inferiority complex. But then all that aside, we go into the summer, we get the players. And my head, and again, I think I'm probably not on my own, went, okay, so he's brought in all these players. He bigged up the style of play the Paris Saint-Germain use so much. Surely that's what we're going to see now. You know, the high risk, high reward, gegenpressing, up in their face, fullbacks high up the pitch, condensing the pitch down, because we've brought in better players now. You've got your Florian Wirtz replacing Elliott. You've got rid of Darwin. You've got Isak. You know, we had a situation left back we weren't happy with. Well, here's Kirkes, the one that we all said was the guy. So I fully expected that. And then the season started and we won the first 5 games. But we were all honest enough to say we won them, but we weren't great. And then nothing came. No new style. Nothing. We never really got to see the clear upgrade and the change. And it feels like the first time the manager got to put his stance on it, we went backwards. When he went away from the thing that had made us successful. And he's refused to go back to that thing. And now there's almost this acceptance that, yes, we have given up a bit more offensively to try to concede a little bit less. So it hasn't worked. And his methods haven't worked. And I know people think I'm a hothead, but I am a very deep thinker. And I do think about these things from a lot of angles before I come on here to talk about it. I'm not just, this is it, I have a thought, let's run with it. I play it out. I look at it from this way, that way. How could that have gone, this have gone? I try my best. Like, I'm not a genius, but I honestly think deeply about these things. And so many things with Slot, I like to say it's death by 1,000 cuts. There's not one thing I can put my finger on. It's lots of little things. Lots of little things that make me feel like it's just not him. And it's just not going to be him. Eddie Cox Wilkins said, I can't go for another season with the manager. Stephen said, I was so ready to see Slot was fired after the meeting last night. Let me guess, no meeting. I don't know. There was one report we went through last night from that one account, something called LFC Cox or something along those lines, COX. And they were, by the way, Stephen, they were the same account today that were trying to say that Xavi Alonso was spotted in Liverpool and was, you know, the picture was taken yesterday of him around Albert Dock, I think it was. And I don't know that account, haven't got a clue, don't know anyone behind it. So never really put any faith in it. Oh, I have it here actually, it's this account, Wilson Cox LFC. So we hear Xavi Alonso's been spotted in Liverpool, more updates soon. And then there was a post that said the image surfacing was apparently taken yesterday. Now, have you all seen the image? Because if you haven't, I can show you the image. I can bring it up on screen. But if you've seen it, just let me know and I won't bother. But I can show you the image if you'd like to see it, in case you haven't. And then you can, you know, make up your own mind on it. And nothing annoys me more, by the way, than somebody who professes to be a Liverpool fan or fan account may be intentionally or willfully lying to other fans. So, right, here's the picture. Let me just make this down to size for you. Hang on. So there you go. There's the picture. Let me try and stretch this out a bit for you. So that's the picture. I'll leave it there for a minute or so you can get a look at it or screenshot it if you need to screenshot it. Now, hard to say definitively, but there's a couple of things. One, I definitely don't think that was yesterday by any stretch of the imagination. And it's hard to say on the picture. The woman beside him, if you look at his wife, height-wise and differential-wise, it looks like it could be a match height-wise. But again, as with a lot of these things, they tend to be grainy, speculative pictures that aren't fully conclusive. So I never put any real weight behind that and thinking, okay, that's it. Not the best view is the key there, Nick. These things are never accidental. But you know what got me about it? Let me just show you again. Do you know what? Let me make this a little bit bigger. Because do you know what had me really questioning myself on it? It was... One sec. Look at the guy across the street. Look at the guy in the red and black jacket across the street. That's what had me thinking. Because look at where he's looking. He's glancing across as if he's seen something. Or somebody famous. Or what's going on over here. Do you get me? In that exact moment of the picture. So that's what had me thinking, huh. Get zoom in a bit more for you. It could just be a coincidence, Mickey. Dude, all of this is circumstantial. I'm not 1 minute convinced that this was yesterday and that this is Alonso. It looks a bit like him. His wife or the lady with him is roughly about the same size as his missus. And the guy across the road looking across, could be looking for anything. Somebody could have made a loud noise or beat the car horn across the road. Absolutely. But like I said, it's not conclusive. But the reason we're having this conversation, by the way, was because of that account yesterday posting about the meeting. So that's the only reason I brought that up, is because Stephen said, I was so ready to see Slot was fired after the meeting last night. Let me guess, no meeting. That was the account that posted about the meeting. That's why I brought the picture up. So yeah, I'm not trying to say here's Xabi Alonso in Liverpool, and we're just talking about the type of things that are out there and are informing or ill-informing fans. I've looked at that picture, zoomed in on it on my phone, tried to do a lot of looking, and it's inconclusive to me as to whether it's him or not. But whether it is him or not, I'm absolutely certain it wasn't yesterday. Because let's think about this. Just think about this logically. If you're Alonso and you're maybe going to become the next Liverpool coach, right? The fuck on a match day are you going to be walking around the Albert Dock with your missus? If you're going to be in talks with Liverpool behind the scenes about maybe becoming the next manager, one, it ain't going to be done in open play like that, is it? You're either going to have Liverpool's representatives over in Madrid in a hotel somewhere on the QT having that conversation, or it's been done in secret somewhere, like when Jurgen was being talked about as Liverpool manager. I think it was New York or Boston that meeting was held in. They ain't going to be meeting, and he's not going to be on a big sightseeing adventure around the Albert Dock and thinking, well, I stick an Albini hat on my head, I won't be noticed. So yeah, there's a lot that I found extremely dubious about that, and it just doesn't make sense and doesn't stand up to scrutiny. But that's what I'm saying. Some people get sucked into this shit on social media and just think, oh my God, that might be true. Which is why I always say to you, question everything. Because I didn't believe that meeting was taking place last night, because it didn't make sense to me. But it suited a narrative for people to get clicks and say, oh, there's a meeting taking place, big meeting, we'll have more, blah, blah, blah. There's always an underlying reason for it. You have to ask yourself why people do these things. Sorry, where was I? Alisson new contract or goodbye in the summer. The Alisson one is... Here's what I think happens with Alisson, and again, it is a think because I don't know. I think he leaves in 2027 on a free and goes back to Brazil to play for Internacional. That's what I think happens. I'd be very surprised if he leaves this summer. It wouldn't be impossible, but what would surprise me more is if he signed a contract extension. It feels to me like 2027 is the best we can hope for. But also, I wonder if his form is slipping a little bit. Because, I'd seen a couple of small things in recent matches that felt very un-Alisson-like. Whether it was, misplaced balls being played out from the back, or whether it was, he could have done better with that goal that we conceded against Burnley. There's just a few things that make me think his power is waning a little bit. But even at that, he's still Alisson Becker and he's still incredible. Right, where were we on this one? So, we've nearly got 4,000 votes, so if you haven't voted, please do. The question we're asking is, do you think FSG are cheap owners? And again, we're not asking this because I'm an FSG out lunatic again. We're asking it because we're trying to figure out why money wasn't being spent. And I'm going to bring you back to a post that I opened up tonight's stream with that links into maybe why we didn't sign Mark Gay. So if you're joining us after the AFCON or at, and bear with me, I'll go through this for you. So it's from Paul Joyce, who said Liverpool hoped that Mark Gay would recognise the efforts they'd made to sign him before the plug was pulled on deadline day, and in turn waited for them till the summer. Then, also from Paul Joyce, Liverpool had banked on receiving £35 million from Aston Villa for Harvey Elliott the summer after bending over backwards in arranging the structure for his loan deal. So, coincidence or not? Last day of the transfer window, the deal was agreed to take Elliott to Villa with an obligation, if games were triggered, for £35 million. Also last day of the summer transfer window, Liverpool have the deal for Mark Gay for 35 million quid. The Elliott deal goes away, and we find that out before the January window opens, that there's no way that Villa are going to make that permanent. Unai Emery came out and said that. Then we start to see Liverpool still hope to sign Mark Gay in the summer, and Liverpool still want Mark Gay. But the great unknown in all of this was what happens if somebody else comes in for Mark Gay in January. One, is he willing to move mid-season? And two, will Liverpool react? Well, we know the answer to one. He is willing to move mid-season because he's doing it. And the answer to two is no, we weren't willing to act. But we did admit, and all the journalists wrote, that we still wanted him in the summer. So why were we not willing to act to spend £20 million for a player that we wanted to spend £35 million on before? There isn't a definitive answer, but the Elliott money is an interesting one. That we banked on that money. The banked being the operative word there from Paul Joyce. Also from Paul Joyce, these are questions he's posing. The 300 grand a week thing, Jamie, that's, how do I say this? That's the carrot dangle to make excuses. Don't buy that. The wages ain't the problem, and wouldn't have been the problem. And what do you think we would have been paying him in the summer if we'd have got him on a free? Because when we were buying him for 35 million, his wages were going to be about 200 odd grand a week. So is it unfathomable to think that if we were getting him on a free, his wages wouldn't have been upwards of £250,000 a week and a big signing on fee? Biggie Mall said, your theory makes no sense, yet I believe it's spot on. It's not my theory. I'm just reading out what Paul Joyce wrote. It's not a theory I have. I'm just trying to say, is this why this happened? Because what we do know is that Mark Gay did become available. And we wanted him last summer. We wanted him next summer. But for some reason, we don't want them now for 20 million quid. That, to me, just doesn't make any sense. Unless somebody's trying to be cheap. So yeah, the 300k a week thing was posted by, I think, one journalist in Alex Crook, who had said 200k a week 15 minutes before that. But as soon as the 300k a week thing came out, everybody jumped on that and said, 300k a week, that's the reason. Greedy bastard didn't want to come to Liverpool. 300 grand a week. He's not worth 300 grand a week. Ignoring the fact that he probably would have got close to that coming in on a free in the summer anyway. And we've strengthened the rival. And Manchester City are bragging to the world that they think they've gotten a £70 million centre-back for 20 million quid, and it's being described by journalists as the perfect transfer. So where's the upside of that to us? How does that improve us or make our situation better? That we're now up against an opponent in City for the Champions League, let's not forget, and the FA Cup, that have bought the centre-back we wanted, still left us short, and went out and signed Semenyo as well and strengthened themselves. You know, these are the type of things that just drive me mental, and I just can't figure out. So anyway, I was saying to you about Paul Joyce, said, should Canade leave on a free, are 2 new centre-backs needed, allowing for the reluctance to give Joe Gomez minutes, which is in part due to his fitness issues, are 2 necessary regardless. So basically, Paul Joyce is saying, are we going to need 2 centre-backs regardless? Should Canade leave on a free, are 2 new centre-backs needed, allowing for the reluctance to give Joe Gomez minutes, which is in part due to fitness issues? Because we know we were willing to sell Gomez to Milan, and we know we wanted Gay. So Canade's contract looks like he's going to walk on a free. So we're now going to have to replace Gay, we missed out on for 20 million quid, and Canade, and probably still sell Joe Gomez. So the only consistents there are going to be Virgil and Giovanni Leone. And are we going to do all of that and bed them all in? Or are we going to get them in the summer and hear about a bedding in process needed, and it being completely normal that results are falling off a cliff and that these guys need time to bed in? Because that will be the excuse. But you could have bedded Mark Gay in now and given yourself a better chance to win these trophies that you're talking about. He goes on to say, is the current midfield ready to push to reclaim the title next season, or does it need strengthening? Will Curtis Jones, who had been attracting interest from Spurs, feel it's time to be more of a guaranteed starter elsewhere? Kostas is due to return from a loan spell with Roma and may become the backup for Milos Kerkez if Andy Robertson departs when his contract expires in 5 months. But that is not a long-term solution. Like Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk, Costa's contract is up in 2027. And that's before we get to the future of Slot, who heard the final whistle on Saturday followed by boos. Sporting director Richard Hughes and the CEO of football, Michael Edwards, they all have 18 months to run on their contracts. So where is the long-term strategy here and thinking? Manager, sporting director and CEO of football all out in 18 months. Virgil, 34, 1 year to go after this season. Still no long-term replacement for him. No replacement for Joel Matip whatsoever. Still no DM. Still no Luis Diaz replacement or minutes for Rio Engamoa. A fallout with Mohamed Salah after he's been given the biggest contract in the football club's history. All of this doesn't paint a picture of genius behaviour from people that have a clear-cut long-term vision. It's frustrating, it's confusing, and I don't know all the answers. And I'm not coming on tonight to say I have them, but what I am doing is showing you that there are other things. Sandro Tonali, let's talk about him for a minute. Dean Jones of ESPN has said Newcastle midfielder Sandro Tonali has emerged as a top target for Liverpool. Now, 2 things here. One, how do you think that would be received if Liverpool tried to buy Tonali off Newcastle? How do we think that's going to go? So, very coincidental that these things are coming out now for the future. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but it almost feels like we're being promised the sun, moon and stars down the line, but nothing's going to happen now. But that's the reason why nothing's happening now, is because the big shit is happening down the line. I don't think there's any chance in hell of us signing Sandro Tonali. He's a great player, a player we did track when I think it was Brescia he was at before he went to Milan. But not one part of me thinks we're signing him. A Chelsea account posted something that I just wanted to lighten things up a minute for. So this Chelsea account, say at CFC Mod, said, "We're in January and Madueke still has 0 goals and 0 assists in the Premier League, but you won't hear anything about it because he doesn't play for Chelsea, Liverpool or Manchester United." I often wonder about some of that stuff, you know, because I do feel like, and I said this about Wirtz, Liverpool are held to one standard and maybe other clubs feel they're being held to a standard, but it was all goals and assists for Wirtz. Oh, he's not doing goals and assists. He's not doing good enough. His goals and assists go. We were all seeing a player that was playing well and getting there bit by bit. But they were quite happy to stick the boot in. But I don't remember anything. And this is the player, by the way, that the Arsenal fan base put a petition out to try to stop their club signing. A petition. Indy Kayla has said, exclusive, fuck me, Newcastle are ready to make Anthony Gordon available for transfer next summer. The club are looking to upgrade in terms of output for goals and assists. Team Talk have said Liverpool have turned their attention to Inter Milan and Italy defender Alessandro Bastoni after missing out on Crystal Palace's Mark Gay, who is set to join Manchester City. Given he's left-footed and plays naturally as the left-sided centre-back, Bastoni is seen as the long-term successor to Virgil van Dijk. Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it, that Bastoni ends up at Liverpool. And I don't for 1 second believe that that's the reason we didn't go for Mark Gay, or after missing out on Mark Gay. We didn't miss out on Mark Gay. We just stood there and watched as he left with somebody else from the nightclub, shall we say, as he went home with a different person. James said, Craig, this is all just sounding all too sad. Yeah, I know. And I guess the big question is, how the fuck did we get here? How was our club constantly able to wrestle misery out of happiness? Or, like, other teams win leagues and then go make a good fist of trying to defend it again. We've yet to do that in modern history. We win a league, Arna and the boys go and party like a small club that have never won the league before. And everybody tries to pacify it by saying, let it go. It's a big deal. And then when standards drop, the excuses come in. It's like we sometimes want it every which way. You either are a football club with standards, and those standards matter every day of every week and every moment, or you're not. And Arne Slot ain't cutting it and meeting those standards, and he should be fired. And the rest is all irrelevant. Bastoni, all these people. If you want clarity on a player's future, they're going to need to know the clarity of who they're coming in to play for. Andy Hunter of The Guardian wrote this. The Echo always do a piece where they go through what other journalists have written about regarding the game. And this is what Andy Hunter of The Guardian wrote. Anfield's emotional verdict to another dispiriting result arrived in the form of boos. Wisely, Arne Slot chose not to dispute it. Is the manager saying, I don't think it was boos, it was frustration, not disputing it? But anyway, the Liverpool head coach got almost everything he wished for against Burnley, more creativity and more chances in particular, but the failure to kill off a relegation-threatened opponent who scored from their only shot on target brought familiar torment. Liverpool had 32 attempts on Martin Dubravka's goal, including one from the penalty spot, with 11 on target. 2 were cleared off the line by Burnley defender Bashir Humphreys. Slot had asked for dominant ball possession to yield more opportunities, and here was the response of sorts. Only Florian Wirtz converted, however. The Premier League champions were held to a 4th successive Premier League draw when Marcus Edwards renewed Burnley's improved second half showing with a fine equaliser. More missed chances followed from Liverpool before a chorus of condemnation greeted the final whistle. A chorus of condemnation. So again, fans have let it known they don't believe in the manager. We know deep down the club don't really believe in the manager because they haven't even entered into the phase of discussions for that new deal that was talked about. But we're all being treated like fucking idiots again. And we're supposed to believe that he still retains the backing of FSG. No, he doesn't. Just sack him. Please, just do the right thing. Because I don't see the upside of keeping him. Other than he won us a league. And if we lose against Marseille or don't beat Marseille on Wednesday, that's another 2 games for the players to have to play in the manager, which is more workload. And again, there's no guarantee you get through that playoff either, is there? Craig, have you seen the AFCON final? I haven't seen any of it. No, haven't. Do you know what? I haven't seen a minute of the AFCON because it wasn't on. For you guys in the UK, I think a lot of it was shown on Channel 4's digital online stuff, but it wasn't really shown here. So it used to be shown on Eurosport, and I used to be able to watch it there. But I haven't been able to watch any of the AFCON this year, so yeah. Which I'm frustrated with because I would have watched it. And I always do try to watch these other international tournaments, whether it's the the AFCON or whether it's the Copa America or whatever. It's all look at chains and road. Huh? Oh, it's AI. Sorry, look at chains and road. I don't think it is AI, to be honest, but I also don't think it's him or it's real. So regardless of whether it's AI or not, I just don't think the whole story just doesn't add up to me, mate. As probably you agree with yourself. Juki said, Craig, first off, much love, mate. Thank you. I love that more people are saying much love. By the way, if I've pushed that out a bit more, that's great because it's a nice little phrase, much love. Second, I'm just fed up as a fan and tired of people defending our joke of a manager. It's eating at me. Not good enough. It isn't good enough, dude. It isn't. And it's eating away at me as well. And every day we go on, the frustration builds from the fans. And as each draw and stupid result comes about, that frustration builds. And it now feels like we've gone from a dreaming season of what's possible to a please wake me up from this nightmare. The real Johnny Sin said, I was at Anfield for the game yesterday. So, do you remember the arcade machine that I showed you that we're putting into the office? Well, the gentleman that makes those arcade machines is a Liverpool fan and was so excited. My wife Sabrina rang to order the machine and got talking to the guy. And we were talking about Liverpool back and forth. And he turned around to my wife and he said, I'm so excited. I'm a Liverpool fan myself. And I'm getting to bring my daughter over for a first game against Burnley this weekend. And I thought to myself, oh, that'll be a grand one. Beat Burnley. And, because you always want, as a parent, if you bring your child, and I'm sure many of you have, to their first sporting event, whether it's the local team, playing GAA, or whether it's the local football team, or whether it's Liverpool. You want that first experience to be a good one, because you want your child, son or daughter, to catch the bug that you did, to fall in love in the same way you did. And then I sat there last night and I thought about it, and how many other parents or brothers and sisters or, granddads and grandchildren have been in that position where the thing they've worked hard to bring their kid over to, or to try and hope that their kid can make that connection with them and they have that for life to share together. That first experience was one of, I thought we were good, Daddy. What happened? I thought Burnley went very good. And there's been so many versions of that where you hear people just heartbroken or frustrated at what had promised to be such a great season, just not delivering with what we have. Stena said injuries. So injuries, again, without context, you could use the word injuries and just try to make an excuse for it. But why do we have the injuries? is important to ask as well. And it's overload of players is the answer to a lot of it. And a lot of that is because we don't have alternatives, or alternatives that the manager trusts. So we have 6 forwards on paper, but we've got 4 forwards in reality. And one of those forwards was Mohamed Salah that he'd already fallen out with and had benched. So then we had Isak, and now he's got a fractured leg. And we've got Ekitike, who hasn't really been able to play a full 90 yet, as the manager thinks he's still getting used to the rigours of the Premier League. So, again, you can say injuries, but I would say that they haven't exactly... Darren said they spent $500 million, you clown. Klopp's gone and the Euro with squad broke. Why am I a clown? Because there's a poll up asking our FSG cheap that has nothing to do with me, Darren? That somebody else put into the chat that I asked as a poll. So, you might think I'm a clown, but you haven't got a fucking clue what you're talking about, dickhead. So again, respect. Show it or fuck off. And if you see me, please come up and call me a clown, mate. I'd love to have that conversation with you. But, you know, you won't, because you're just a fucking idiot who wants to come in and belittle people when you don't even know the context of why the question's there. I'm not trying to say FSG are cheap. It was spoken about as to why we haven't been making moves in this market, and it was the Paul Joyce story about the 35 million from Elliott and Gay. But you'd have known that if you had taken the time to try to figure it out instead of just leaping in to try to sound like an intelligent fucker. So my dad had a phrase for people like you, and it's that you're a know-all that knows fuck all. So yeah, I'm not trying to say FSG are cheap. We're asking a question based off a narrative formed in the conversation for people who've been here with us for the evening. And by the way, for whatever it's worth, 60% or almost 60% of those people do say that they're cheap. So there you go. And I don't, like I said, I think they've had a great summer and I applauded them for the spending. So Ding said, chill out, Craig. Don't tell me what to do. Don't. See, the thing is, right, to some people, when people come in to be a dickhead, people say, calm down or don't buy, which is cool. But my view is a bit different. My view is, if we continue to allow people to act this way in society, it becomes the norm. And I wasn't raised that way. And I dare say you weren't raised that way. You were raised to talk to people respectfully, as was I. So why does that respect and that basic dignity go out the window when we come online? And why is it always the onus on the person, somebody else has to ignore it? For me, I think the standard should be that it just isn't accepted. Do you get me? So rather than telling me to chill, I would say that the argument should be that people should just behave better, whether online or in real life. You've seen me all night. I've been respectful to everybody. Even people that have disagreed. We've had back and forth. We've had a conversation. But I will never, ever, ever take any disrespect from somebody without deserving it. And I will never, ever, ever allow our community or any of you to be disrespected by somebody. Simple. It's the ABCs that make me me. I don't, and I'll never apologise for who I am. I don't think respect should be an edgy topic. Anyway, let's keep going. Thank you very much, Isaiah. Appreciate you. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anybody. It's wild difference of one staff member can change the tide in the locker room when Johnny Heidinger left last summer. It's hard to know, isn't it? Like, there was certainly a piece written that said that he was very well regarded in the dressing room, Johnny Heidinger. And there was a piece the other day, and I think it was in Independent, so again, I'd say I'm probably not believing it. But you wonder, did we approach Johnny Heidinger maybe to come back? Or did we give Spurs a free run at him because we had Giovanni from Bronkhorst? Like, these are the type of things that I don't think we all know the answer to because we aren't in the dressing room. So it's really impossible for us to know the answer to, other than to kind of try to guess. And with the Johnny Heidinger situation, how much of a loss he was, only those inside the dressing room can really ask that one, or answer that one, because they seen the day-to-day stuff, and they would know the differences, good or bad, between Giovanni from Bronckhorst and Johnny Heidegger. But what we do know for certain is that Johnny Heidegger is now working with Spurs. Craig, first off, much love. I think I've done that one already. Juki, I've done that one. Raekwon said the corporate office is in London anyway. Exactly, but like I was saying, Raekwon, if you have a manager and you're thinking about gazumping him and bringing in another manager, that you're not doing that in the city on the day that you're playing and having him strolling around the city where he can be seen by anyone. It's not like he's not known in Liverpool, So yeah, the whole thing just sounded very far-fetched, and upon any scrutiny didn't really make sense. I'd have took a Wharton and Barcola over Isak, in my opinion. Yeah, probably. But we don't know if Wharton would have been available as an example this summer. Certainly don't know if Barcola would have been available. But look, let me just say this. I'm really happy Liverpool Football Club have Alexander Isak as a player. So unfortunate what's happened to him, but I think in the longer term, he'll show why we paid the money for him. I think Ugo Ekitike has been nothing short of magnificent since he's come in. I think we're starting to see a bit more from Kirkes on the left side, a bit more consistency than maybe we had in times gone by. So look, all of these things are more reasons why I think if you get somebody else in, we can still go in the right direction. And I don't think the owners actually have to come in and throw a load of dough at this situation. But there are certain things that we need to get done. And I think if the goal is, and it's not my goal or your goal, but if their goal is Champions League football as a bare minimum, I think it's a risk to stick with Slot and think that that's a guarantee, because it's very congested from 4th place down to 8th place in the Premier League. A few points either way. And we have some difficult enough games coming up. An away trip to Marseille in the Champions League, followed by an away trip to Bournemouth in the Premier League, and then we have Newcastle at home on the Saturday night the following week. And we all know that they're going to be coming baying for blood and looking for a result. So these are it's only going to get more difficult, and I think if you've got players who aren't as inspired or motivated as they should be, the results aren't going to be great. But that's just my take. This one. Anthrop said, remember when we kept haggling over 5 million back in June? Hierarchy to blame, majorly disgusting. Sometimes it feels like we almost try to be too clever, Anthrop. And look, every penny counts, I get that. And 5 million is 5 million. In anyone's books, 5 million is 5 million. But when you look back on it now, and it hasn't happened, and we haven't gotten, and we've injuries in centre back, and he's gone elsewhere, that 5 million really does start to look cheap. And to be fair to a lot of journalists like Henry Winter and others, there was always a wonder of how serious Liverpool's appetite was to get Mark Gay when we left it that late. But the narrative was always still that we wanted him, and that we still wanted him in the summer. So it is a real weird one that we've not done anything in January. And, regardless of whether we agree on Mark Gay, I think we all agree we need a centre-back. Right, I'm going to stay on for 20 more minutes. But I want to ask you a question before. One last poll. So, would you agree that we should sign a centre-back this month? So whether your Mark A is too small, whether you're I want Alessandro Bastoni, whether you're whomever, would you agree that we should and need a centre-back this month? Because if we can agree on that, I think we can all agree that it hasn't been good enough. Because here we are, more than halfway through the month, and nothing's happened. And the words no-brainer are there, and that's kind of where I'd be at with it. So then you're asking why it hasn't happened. And that's the great unknown. We don't know why it hasn't happened. We can only speculate. Adam, Christmas, and thank you, Adam, for 13 months with us as a member as well, bro. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does Flo have a song yet? Didn't somebody do the Venga Boys song the other day for Florian Wirtz as a super chat that I was trying to sing? I think I'm almost sure there was one. I remember singing some Venga Boys song the other day, yesterday actually. Sorry, but yeah, I think that one was about Wirtz if I remember correctly. Rolfie said, would love Marmouche in Liverpool. Him and Ekitike had a great partnership in Frankfurt. Marmouche way down the pecking order of Man City now. So on that signing, I agree, by the way. And it's another one of those where when he signed for Man City, the wages became the headline figure. But we wouldn't have given him those wages and he still would have come to us for a lot less. And I would say that about Mark Gay as well, like Brian said earlier on, is that we would have got him for less. There have been a few players, Rolfie, that I feel like we have let go and slipped through the net. He's one of them. Mickey van de Ven feels like another one. And then you'd have to go a bit further back for the other ones I'd be talking about. But yeah, in modern times, I would have loved Marmouche as well. And I felt like he would have been perfect because he had that versatility. So you still could have brought yourself in the Ekitike, like you said, or an Isak. But again, we didn't make that move and City did. And also, let's not forget, City also got rid of their goalkeeper and brought in Gianluigi Donnarumma. So, like, they've been building as if they haven't got 115 charges hanging over their head. Arsenal built out their squad depth to a very impressive depth where they have so many options in defence now. Brought in Zubamendi, who we tried to sign. And by the way, still haven't really brought in that player. We signed Endo, who we know isn't going to play week in, week out. So we still haven't got that central defensive midfielder in. We've got Ryan Gravenberch, but still not an out-and-out DM. Our beautiful sport is dying because of one thing, greed. Yeah, and that starts from the top of the sport with FIFA. Because there's a lot I'd like to say about FIFA, but I don't particularly want to end up in court. You know, the type of things I'd say to me mates down the pub, but not in a microphone on YouTube. Greedy little piggies would probably one of the first things that comes to mind. And for a non-profit, I think the way they run football is grubby and not for the betterment of the sport. So this piece from earlier on from Romano said Chelsea have agreed personal terms with Jeremy Jacquet, the clear main target at centre-back. Contract ready. Player keen and talks ongoing with Ron, asking for a club record sale of about €65 million. Chelsea currently bid lower. Emission de France already took place. So Chelsea sacked their manager because they weren't happy and are still going out there and bringing another centre-back. United sacked their manager after bringing in players for him and his system in the summer. And yet we're sitting here talking about how much longer we have to put up with Arna and the style of football that's not connecting anyone. Apologies. Just still have a bit of a head cold and I don't want to be coughing on the mic at you. So, if you can, guys, can you please hit that like button for me? And if you haven't subscribed, we'd love you to do that as well. When is the Marseille preview? Tomorrow. Let me just check my schedule because I have it all mapped out. Yeah, Marseille preview will be live at 10:30 tomorrow night. So I'm recording it tomorrow and it'll come out at 10:30 tomorrow night. I think I've got everyone's. If I've missed anyone's super chat rating, by the way, please do let me know while I've still got time, but I think I've gone through them all. If we get Diamonde and Van de Ven this window, then I can see us winning things. Stand still and sign no one. Scared will not even finish in the top 4. So when you say Diamonde, do you mean Yan Diamonde or Usman Diamonde, the centre back from Sporting? Because Usman Diamonde, I think, has signed a new deal with a higher release clause at Sporting. Mickey Van de Ven, all I can imagine is, like, Daniel Levy is known for being a pain in the arse to deal with, but he's not there. So maybe Spurs are easier to deal with. But even getting Van de Ven from a Premier League club to another Premier League club, it feels like that would be expensive and difficult. And Jan, the sporting director, I think it was, of RB Leipzig, let me just read this out because we talked about it yesterday. Yeah, here it is, here, nice and handy. So Red Bull managing director Oliver Mintzlaff said, "You can't let him go after just 1 year. But the truth is there are also other top clubs out there looking at him. Top clubs in England are interested, including Liverpool. So they don't want to let him go until the end of the season. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like that one is a runner for now." Mark Harding said, "Missed my super chat." No problems, Mark. Let me scroll back through. Yeah, I did indeed, Mark. Thank you for pointing it out. Why did we not offer Elliot for Gay now, with Elliot going at the end of the season? Us not getting Gay is embarrassing. Look, I don't know if there was any interest from Palace in Elliot or Elliot and Palace, but what I do know is I still don't understand us not going to Aston Villa and asking them to cancel Harvey Elliott's contract and bring him back. Because at least if we bring him back, we control the minutes he gets and he will be useful. Even if the manager doesn't think longer term, he's going to be the guy, because the manager probably won't be here. Putting Elliott in the shop window, getting us minutes, and we know he'll give 100%, will hopefully get you a bigger fee in the summer as well. So even at that, I don't get this part of it. Arno will say he's a Villa player, and journalists will write that there is no clause that allows us to cancel it. But Unai Emery and Aston Villa are also telling the world publicly that they won't play him because of the clause. So I can't believe that Villa wouldn't be open to one of two things. Either removing the release clause, or the clause that gives an obligation to buy, but guaranteeing us they will play him more, or cancelling it and sending him back to Liverpool. So even that in itself is a situation that feels like a pretty straightforward fix. His value isn't going to go up sitting on Villa's bench, if he even gets on the bench. But at least if he's back at Liverpool, getting some minutes with us, at least then he's in the shop window and will hopefully get more money in the summer and, give him a chance, maybe an outside chance to force his way into the England squad. These are things that I can't get my head around. Elliot in Chiesa seemed like no-brainer. Yeah, again, if the manager or the club don't view Chiesa as part of the longer-term future, which they don't, move him out. Bring Elliot back in and give him those minutes. There's just so many things that just doesn't make sense. Stena said, Elliot is not the player we take back. But the reason, Elliot, that I'm mentioning that is because of the Paul Joyce piece that said Liverpool had banked on the money. So he writes, Liverpool had banked on receiving 35 million for Harvey Elliott this summer after bending over backwards in arranging the structure for his loan deal. So whether you think bringing him back or not is the right decision, I think if you have to sell him longer term, him being at Liverpool is going to get you more money than him having had a whole year of doing nothing at Aston Villa and a year of his career wasted. That's before we even talk about our duty of care to a player that's still a Liverpool player. But we know Slot doesn't rate Elliott either. Sad for him. I rate him. Yeah, that's why we should fire Slot. That's yet another reason why the manager should be gone. Because he will be gone eventually. Summer at the latest. And the Elliott situation will still be bad. There are a few little easy wins that I just don't think we're doing. Darren Scoot said, the funny thing is that clubs that have sacked their managers are actually doing better than last season, unlike us who stuck with ours and are shite. Yeah, like, there's not one part of me, Darren, that thinks United would have beaten Man City 2-0 if Ruben Amorim was still there. And I have said this multiple times. I'm absolutely convinced that in the short term, and I got to underline the term short term, Steven Gerrard or somebody like him coming in to be an interim at Liverpool would get us back in the right direction and restore some confidence. It wouldn't be the long-term solution, but we have the option of Xabi Alonso sitting there now. So even if Alonso said, look lads, I don't want to take a job till the summer, at least he could say, right, we'll get Stevie in, steady the ship, and then bring in Alonso in the summer. What if you're Arne Slot and you start to hear that Liverpool are talking behind the scenes about Xabi Alonso? You're not going to feel great about that, are you? So all of this to me just feels like, look, we know Slot's not going to be here long term. Sack him while there's still chance. Because what we don't want to see is Alonso heading elsewhere then, us sacking Slot and us still being going, what the fuck do we do? Because I don't really think we're going to get Luis Enrique yet. I think he will extend at PSG for a bit longer. But again, wouldn't say no, he's a great coach. That meme guy said, honestly give Xabi Alonso interim, and if he does good enough, then give him the job. See, I don't think he takes that. Stenna said, Gerrard is no way a manager. Again, I think you're willfully just not listening to what I'm saying, mate, and trying to be argumentative. Nobody's trying to tell you that Steven Gerrard's the long-term coach at Liverpool. What I am trying to say to you is he will walk into that dressing room, command the respect of everybody in it, be able to talk about what it means to wear that badge, what's expected of you, and the standards that are absolutely to be maintained. And I won't for 1 second believe that isn't the case. He could bring in Fowler with him. He could have brought in Heidinger with him. He could bring Gary Mack back with him. It is a short-term solution, bro, and I'm not trying to say it's a long-term one. But again, the new manager bounce is a real thing. And even if it's an interim with Gerrard, it stops the rot. And it stops the uninspired shit that we're seeing. But I respect where you're coming from, because I also agree with you that I don't think Gerrard is the guy long term in any way, shape or form. And even if he came in and won the FA Cup, I'd still be saying no thank you long term. He's just not the guy. But somebody needs to come in now and do something with this group. And I'm not. It doesn't have to be Steven Gerrard, by the way, for what it's worth. I'd love Alonso to come in now and take the job, because that would mean he'd be fully settled in. And he wouldn't have to worry about a shortened summer with a World Cup. It would mean he'd get to know his players, have a look over them now. And, you'd hope that by the start of next season, we'd absolutely be hitting the ground running. But like I said, I don't know whether he's open to moving into a job now or not, Alonso. I'd be guessing on that one. I wonder if there's a financial reason to let Slot see out the season in terms of his payout. So there was talk, and again I'm working off reports here, that it would cost about 10 million quid to sack Slot. So why not just sack Slot and sell Chiesa? There's your 10 million quid. I just don't think removing Slot is going to change this at the minute. I respect that, mate. We can differ on this, no probs. And for what it's worth, DJ Mickey Finn, if I remember correctly from our conversation earlier, you think the players have a big part to play in this as well. And I'm with you on that, mate. I truly am. But we just, unfortunately, we know the way football works, and that it's usually the managers that are held to account. And players, it's a lot harder to move out players than it is to sack a manager. Like, you won't really sack a player unless there's a huge crime or something that they've done and you cancel the contract or whatever. But yeah, I'm certainly not trying to say that there isn't some truth to the players not performing well enough, mate. Absolutely. And I don't know why that may be. Some of that could be to do with the manager. Some of it could be to do with confidence. Some of it could be to do with the Ogo. It could be a lot of things. So I'm certainly not trying to say Arne is the only problem. If I come across that way, my apologies. I don't mean it to be. The only thing that concerns me over Slot is that his family are not with him. That could be affecting him. Potentially, yeah. I mean, I certainly know if my own family weren't with me all the time, it'd be very difficult. But his family also weren't with him last year, mate, and he won the league. Now, unless I'm wrong, and they were with him last year and this year because of exams or something, they're not. Maybe I'm wrong on that one, so if I am, apologies. I don't really tend to look into people's family lives when we're talking about them. I usually just try and look at the football side of it. But yeah, look, I can absolutely understand it as a husband and as a father how, not having your family around you could be a difficult moment, or it could be more difficult. Absolutely. Has to go, brothers said, honestly, we've become so difficult to watch. Anfield used to be a fortress. Teams were scared to come off. Now they're not. They're upset if they don't leave at least a point. Yeah. You're not wrong, dude. You're not wrong. World of Naturalist said, Slot has lost the dressing room. Verts has already said he was disappointed with the draw, which felt like a loss. Sure, he's not the only one feeling that way. Slot can't be good for the players. Nigel said, hi Craig, when do you think your move to the new studio will go ahead? Can't wait to see your first live stream from there. I haven't really put a hard time frame on it because all of these things can change if something goes wrong, but I'm hoping to be streaming in there, let's say, early March. Could be quicker, but early March. I just don't want to make the move until we're all confident that everything's perfect technically and we won't have to go backwards once we go in. So, yeah, it's all going in the right direction, though. We did all the internet speed tests and all that stuff the other day. It's all great, all where we'd want it to be. Now it's flooring going in, painting, fit out, camera angles, all the boring stuff, but the fun stuff for me. So yeah, I'm hoping March. I'm on holidays in March, so I'm hoping we get a few streams in before I go away in March. Right, ladies and gents, we're going to wind this one down. We did run a quick poll at the end to ask, would you agree that we should sign a centre-back this month? And 95% of everybody said yes. So look, tonight, again, I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your kindness. I appreciate your support. We may have disagreed on certain topics tonight, but in the majority, I really appreciate everybody's willingness to come in and debate and have a chat about it. I'll be back here tomorrow night, same time, same place. Connor will be here in the morning with a news video. I'll have an evening news video. The preview for the Marseille game will be coming out tomorrow night. And as always, thank you so much for coming in to join us. I appreciate you giving up your time. Have a lovely evening and appreciate you. Thank you. Bye-bye.